Airbnb on Solana. Let me know if this sounds like you. You're a developer who wants to get into Web3 and you have no idea where to start. Well, I hear you guys and I'm on this coding journey with you, and today I have the perfect build for you to get started. Today, we'll be making Airbnb Web 3.0 dApp with Next.js on the Solana blockchain. I'll walk you through how you can create your very own smart contract on the Solana chain using Anchor, which is just a framework of Rust. We'll then show you how you can take that data and store it on chain. Think of it as a database that is fully decentralized. We'll use QuickNode as our RPC node provider to access the blockchain. I'll then show you guys Solana Playground, which you can use to create, deploy, and more importantly, test your functions of your smart contract so that you can understand how it all works. We'll use Phantom Wallet to authenticate our users and sign them in, and we'll use Solana Explorer to verify that they are 100% real. Now, before we get started, make sure you use our CLI tool that we'll provide you so you get the fully built front end so we can focus on the Solana blockchain code. So with that said, I'll see you guys in the demo and let's get started. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing you should do is open up that terminal and type the command npx clever programmer at latest. This is our CLI tool that's gonna give you all the files that you need so that we can have the same files and start at the same place. And while it's initializing, it's gonna help us get signed up for QuickNode, because for this app, we need an RPC node provider to connect us directly to the blockchain. So while it's initializing, we can do that. So let's type in that command, type in your email address, then your name, and then select the project you wanna initialize. And of course, it's the Solana Airbnb. Awesome, so there you go. Look at that. So it takes you directly to this page. And if you don't have an account already, sign in so you can make use of QuickNode's free tier. So I'm just gonna sign in and I'll come back once we get to the same landing page. Perfect, so now that you confirmed your account, the next step, which is nice and quick to get started, is click create an endpoint. And here you'll see all the different chains. You'll see Ethereum, you'll see Polygon, you'll also see Avalanche on here as well, but we're gonna be using Solana. So let's click Solana. And see the three networks. There are three networks. Mainnet uses your real soul. Do this if you're sure you want to develop on there. For us and learning purposes, we'll be using the DevNet. Okay, so let's hit continue and then click create endpoint, and voila, it's done. That's all you have to do to get started. All you need to do next is take this HTTP provider and hit copy, and we'll save it for later. So by the time you finish signing up, you should have VS Code open, right? It opens that up automatically for you guys with our CLI tool. So what we can do is hit Control or Command J, CD to the front end folder, and hit yarn dev. Once you do that, you can also press Control click, and there we go. Awesome. So you can see this is the static version of the Airbnb. It's different from the demo, right? Because there's no wallet connection, as you see here, and there's just static data right here. How do I know it's static? Well, let me show you why it's static, because if I were to delete this and then refresh, it's back, right? Because it's static data that is just set up, right? It's not actually being saved that it was deleted, right? What's the point of this, Lance? Well, our goal is to take this front end with static data and use the data that's stored on chain and learn about it, okay? And don't worry, I'll break down the app with you guys because that is the main focus. So I know you haven't seen what the code looks like, and a lot of this is set up for you already. So if you're a beginner, watch this part, and if you're a little bit more advanced, feel free to skip ahead when I start coding, okay? So welcome, my beginners. Let's head over to this fancy whiteboard and let's figure out what we want to do with this app, okay? So one thing you'll notice is it's not connected with Phantom, like I mentioned before. So that will be our first step. So let's write that down as pseudocode, okay? So our first step together, guys, it's gonna be set up Phantom connection, right? Phantom is a wallet which holds all your SOL that we can use to authenticate the users that log in, okay? What's the next thing we want to do? Well, let's think about the app, right? This is essentially a CRUD app: create, read, update, delete, right? So we want to be able to add a listing, right? Don't worry about how this works just yet. Just know that we want a function that will add a listing on the Solana chain, right? Because this is just going to add it to our local environment and not anywhere else. Okay, so let's write that here. Create Solana program, and I'm going to use the words contract and program interchangeably. Just know that's the same thing. Okay, so create Solana program, and for the functions it should be add listing, right? We also want to, and let me say create listing so it's more sense. Create listing. We want to fetch listing, right? Read listings, right? Fetch listings. And what do I mean by fetch? Well, with fetch, if you look, this is essentially an array of objects that I'm mapping through and displaying, right? But what we want to do instead is fetch the accounts from Solana, right? And then map through them. Fetch listings, right? From there, we want to update listings, right? What do I mean by update? If you go back to the demo, right, we can edit this and change every aspect of it. We should still be able to do that on Solana, on chain. Okay. From there, we can also delete listings, right? Since we're going to be creating accounts on chain, we can also close the account and that will be considered deleting, right? Cool. So this is our goals. So let's talk about how this app works. And usually when I talk about how an app works, I think about the tree or the parent-child relationship between components. Okay, so what we can do is, let's just bring it over here and bring the code over here. Okay, we're gonna share some real estate, right? So if you open up Frontend, right, the first thing you'll notice is on the folder pages that there is app, right? And maybe we could just make this bigger for now. First thing that you'll notice is that there's an app.js and it holds all of this, right? It has a head, which is the title, and then this component, right? This component right here, right, is actually the index.js, right? So what do I mean by this? I mean that there is a parent called app, right? There is a app, right? And inside of app, it has a child. In here it says component, but that is the index, okay? Sorry for the terrible drawing, but I'll make it look nice in a second, right? So that's the index, okay? So how do I see what's inside of the index, right? How do I see what's inside of this component? Well, I could just click the index.js here. So within the index, there's a bunch of different code here, right? It might be overwhelming, but let's just look at what's important, right? There is components within the index component, right? So that means the index has children. So let's go through together what children does it have. So let's clear out all of this and give me a second to organize my files. Amazing. Okay, cool. So we got our app right here, and let's just build out that tree here so we all understand what I mean. Okay, so what do we know? We know that we have an app right here. App. We also know that it has a child called index. Index. Okay, so now let's go to it together and figure out what is the children of index, right? So a child of the index component would be another set of components, right? So let's see if you guys can see the first component. So these are functions, right? Scrolling, right? Is this a component, right? Not necessarily, right? It has something within it called Airbnb clone. That's the title. Okay, but is this a component? Yes, it is. It is a component called what? Header. Awesome, you got it. So if it's a component called header, oops, let's undo that. I can draw a line right here and say, hey, index has a component or a child component called header, right? And you might ask, what does header do, right? So in order to understand what header does, right, let's look at the app, right? This is what it looks like. Look what happens if I comment out that header. Boom, right? What did we lose? We lost that little area right here that held our phantom connection, right? Then that's the header of a normal app. So if we comment out the header component, we lose the header, Make sense? Cool. Awesome. Okay, so we got that out of the way, figured that out. Next is the filter menu, right? What's the filter menu? Is that a component? Yes. Yes, sir. So that is a component. So what we'll do right here, we'll write filter menu. Nice. Okay, this isn't too bad, right, guys? So we have the filter menu, and at the moment, I'll tell you the filter menu isn't that important for what we're going to do, but it's good to note down. Awesome. Okay, the next thing that's a component is listings. Oops. Listings. All right, and I'll move a little bit faster. This is all modals, right? What do you think this add listing modal means? Well, if I click add listing, this component right here is the add listing modal, right? If I click this pencil icon from the listing, I get the edit listing modal. And if I click this heart icon, I get the reserve listing modal, right? They all exist in the index, right? But when does it show? It only shows, right, when this is clicked, right? So there's a function that's toggling this on and off, and I keep the modals here. So what I'll do to simplify this is, there's a picture, there's a bunch of children, right? But I'll just label it as one, all the modals, right? So I'll tell you right now which ones are the important ones, right? The important ones, which I'll mark in blue, is going to be the header, right? The header, the listings, and all the modals, right? That's where the functionality is going to live, right? And a good question to ask is, do any of these components have children? Well, if you look, let's see if add listing modal has children. So let's find that. Go to components, go to listing, go to add listing modal. If you look, they have no real components, just a transition, right? Which is not that important for you to learn at the moment. But what you do need to know is that the listings component, right? This one right here, that has a child, right? Because for every Airbnb listing, we want to map through it and create a listing item, right? So if I were to draw this relationship, right, there could be multiple, right? And actually this would be multiple too, multiple listing items, right? All these squares are listing items, right? So if I asked you guys on Airbnb, right, how many listing items do you see, right? I tell you 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So that is the tree of our app, right? So what we want to do for step one, is set up a Phantom wallet connection, right? So where do you think I'll need to focus on to do that, right? If I'm going to make a Phantom wallet connection, do I need to look at the filter menu? No. Do I need to look at the listings? Maybe, right? But if I want to ensure that I'm connected throughout my whole app, right, I should look right here, right? Phantom wallet connection should go right here, okay? So with that in mind, let's minimize this. And if we go to the pages and then go to the app, this is where we want to set up that wallet provider, right? That wallet connection provider, okay? But at the moment, we don't have a wallet connection provider. So let's go ahead and set that up. So to give our app some context of what a wallet connection provider is, what I'm going to do is create a new folder and let's call it contacts. Okay. And once we have a new folder called contacts, within the context folder, I'm going to make a new file and I'm going to call it wallet connection provider.js. This is what you're going to need to do to set up that wallet connection, right? And once you're there, let's import a couple things. We're going to say import connection, connection provider from Solana wallet adapter React. So I press tab so that's automatically imported. How's this, guys? Can you see that? Cool. So after that, you can do wallet provider. All right, we got connection provider, we got wallet provider, and then let's import wallet modal provider as well. And this is gonna come from the React UI. Yep, this one, Solana wallet adapter React UI. Okay, and then what wallet are we gonna be using? We're gonna be using the Phantom wallet. So I'm just gonna say Phantom wallet adapter, and this is from @Solana wallet adapter wallets. Perfect. Okay, and the last thing we're gonna do is let's import use memo. Okay, cool. All right, so we did a lot of imports, but we don't have the provider itself. So let's set it up by saying const wallet connection provider is equal to boom. All right, so this is our provider, which we will then bring back to our app, right? And wrap our entire index with that provider, right? If you don't understand what I mean just yet, just bear with me. So we have our wallet connection provider. We will then need an endpoint, right? Oh, and another thing is in the parentheses here, let's add children. It's gonna take in children. Cool. All right, so inside our provider, let's set up our endpoint. So we'll say const endpoint is equal to use memo, right? So this is a React hook, and within this hook, it's gonna take in an empty or anonymous function, right? And then you're gonna do comma array. All right, the key thing about this endpoint is this is where we're gonna write the URL of our endpoint. And if you remember the keyword here, endpoint, right, we're gonna need, you can put our quick node connection here. So let's go back to here. Let's bring this up, copy this, or if you have it saved somewhere, bring it back. And then in quotes, go ahead and paste that over here, right? And if you don't like how long it looks, sometimes what I do is I'll take this, const connection is equal to this, right? And then you can just pass in connection right here. Okay, that should work. And let's just put some space between those two. Awesome. All right, so that's our endpoint setup. All right, the next thing we want to do is say const wallets is equal to use memo again. All right, and then we got to get the wallets that we want to use, which in this case is just Phantom. All right, so you can leave the parentheses blank in there and just write new. Right, we're going to create a new instance of Phantom wallet adapter. So we're making use of this right here. Okay, and then, you know, to call this, put parentheses right here, and then comma empty array. Okay, so we got our endpoint set up, we got the wallet set up, and now we just want to put, what do we want to do with this provider? Well, we want to return parentheses the connection provider. Okay, and what do we want to do with the connection provider? We say endpoint, right, is equal to endpoint. All right, so where is this endpoint coming from? We use memo to set up and get the connection, right? We're going to be doing something with wallets next. Okay, so we set up the connection provider. If you look at our imports, we still haven't used the wallet provider. All right, so let's use that next. Let's use wallet provider. Okay, and in here we're going to pass in a prop that's just going to be wallets is equal to wallets, right? Just like this, right? Exactly the same as this. Endpoint wallets goes here. All right, another cool thing we could do is auto connect, right? If your Phantom wallet is already connected, just auto connect it. If you don't want to do that, you want to make it, you know, manual, you don't have to put this line right here. Cool, awesome. We also want to provide the modal, right? So when you click on the connection, you'll see like the list of wallets, right? This is the wallet modal provider. Let's go ahead and add that as well. Wallet modal provider. Okay, and that is going to take in children. All right, so now whatever we pass into the provider will be passed into the wallet modal provider as well. And next, which is last but not least, make sure you do this so that it actually exports, right? So you can export default the wallet connection provider, right? Why do you do this? We export it so that we can import it somewhere else. And where do you want to import this connection provider? If you remember, you should import it right here. Awesome, cool. So in terms of imports, this is already set up kind of for you guys. What we need to do next is say const wallet connection provider is equal to dynamic, right, which is coming from this import right here, parentheses, and then anonymous function. And you can say import parentheses quotes dot context, right? And why am I going into context? Because that's where the provider is. Okay. And then in between these two parentheses, you can put a comma here, and then let's put the scope in with the two curly brackets and just write SSR false. Perfect. All right, that should be it. Now we're all the way back to that first thing I said. We want to wrap our connection provider within the app itself, right? So what we could do is go in here, right, underneath head, hit enter, and type in wallet connection provider, and put that component, which is our index, right in there. Amazing, right? So everything in this connection provider is set up from our context right here. Cool, so we have that set up. Now, oh, look at this. So look, it's already auto connecting, and it's asking me to connect to my Phantom wallet. But if you look on our Airbnb, we haven't set it up on the front end. So the connection is working, but not on the front end. So what do we do? Well, if you don't have Phantom already, go ahead and type in Phantom Chrome extension, right? And it should take you to this page right here. Make sure you add the extension so you can have the Phantom wallet right here. Okay, awesome. Once that's done, set up your account and you should have a wallet. It should look like this, and you're gonna need some Sol, right? This isn't real Sol, so don't get too excited, right? When you're on DevNet, you can do something called Sol Faucet and get Sol or Solana tokens that you can use to test your app, right? So if you want your address, right, your wallet address, click copy clipboard up here, and then you want to paste it. And for the airdrop, I usually put 2, then you can hit DevNet and bam. All right, we just got instantly 2 Sol tokens that we can use to play with. And now instead of 10, I have 12, right? So that's how you set up your Solana. That's how you get some Sol, right? So let's work on the front end part of this. So X out this, boom. All right, so if you want to set up the front end portion about this, we need to work on the wallet connect button, which is going to go right here. What component does that live in, right? Is it going to be on listings, on index, right? Take a look at this. Where do you think it's going to be at? Okay, cool. If you said header, let's go. You got it, right? That makes sense. It's like intuitive. Okay. So if it's in the header, let's see if we're right. We can X this out. Let's see if we're right and head over to the header. Oops. Okay, so if we go to our index, right, we think it's in the header, right? And if we go to the header component, let's find that button. Ah, there it is. Okay, see this user circle icon? This is it right here, right? If you're never sure about what you're doing, go ahead and comment stuff in and out. And that's how I do it to learn what app I'm using. So if I comment this out, boom. Notice how it's gone right here, right? Instead of this div, we want to replace this with the Phantom or just the wallet connect button we get from Solana. All right, so it's there, and then it's gone. See it? So what do we need to get this done? Well, let's scroll up to the top of header for now. And if you look, right here, we have the wallet multi button. That's what we're going to be using for this. We're also going to need something else. Now that I'm thinking about it, we need to require at Solana wallet adapter react UI /styles.css, right? This is to get the styling of the React router, not the React router, sorry, the Solana wallet adapter. Okay, So we're gonna require that, right? Keep this one in mind, wallet multi-button, and let's scroll down. What we're gonna do next is let's set up the wallet multi-button. So the wallet multi-button, we're gonna take that import and just say wallet multi-button. Okay, and I already have styling for this. So we can just do class name is equal to phantom button, right? And then there's also an icon that I have with it. Let me see if I have it still. Right, okay, cool. So then we can do something like this. Start icon is equal to user circle icon, self-close. And the icon is gonna have a style. And the style is gonna be height 32. Width, let's make that 32 as well. And the color, I have this saved for you guys. It's gonna be hashtag F or 1F2937. That should be it. And let's just test this out by saying span connect wallet. Okay, let's just see what that looks like so far. Okay, all right. Hey, there it is. You can see the connect wallet, but the styling is a little off, so let's fix that. Okay. So in our span, let's go ahead and give it a class name. And for the class name, we can do text small, font medium, text black. Okay, let's see if this helps. There you go. That looks way better. I can actually see it now. I think it's missing a little something. Actually, I think that's fine for now. So what we want to do next is let's click on the button and look at that. It all works. The functionality, we didn't have to do anything. We just had to set it up, right? Cool. So if I click Phantom, bam, right? I clicked on it. I'm connected. I know it doesn't look like I'm connected, right? But there's a way to test it, okay? So what we could do to prove it to you that I'm connected is head over back to this right here. And I want to talk about something really quick. So you're going to notice that I'm passing down something called connected here. This is what we call props in React. And assuming you know what props are, where is this connected variable coming from, right? Well, if you don't know where it's coming from, go to the parent, right? So who's the parent of header? If you know it from our Zeitboard, the parent of header is the index. So let's go back to the index. So back in the index, you can see it right here. I'm directly passing connected to that header, okay? So what that means is, what is connected, right? Let's find out what that is. So if I do Control F, type in connected, boom, 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 boom. Oh, I saw it. There. We have something saying connected is equal to true, right? So if we are connected, right, I should see this connect wallet button change to something else. I want it to actually just say my address. So my address is like this 8T something. Okay, so let's keep this static for now, and then let's go back to header. Right, so how do I set up that condition then? If we're connected, don't show me connect wallet, show me something else, right? So let's do that real quick. What we can do right here is turn this into a template literal by making this an object, right? And it's actually not a template literal, just put curly brackets around this, right? So what we want to do next is put this in quotes, boom. It still should be the same thing, but now let's set up something called conditional rendering and say, if we're connected, right? If connected is true, which is, it is, question mark, right? We're going to show 8T dot 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 dot. This is my address, right? A static version of my address. And then put colon here, and then quotes. All right, so what did I do with this line? Let's do Alt-C. Can you guys see that better? Cool, so what did I do? I put curly brackets around the text, and I say, if connected is true, show me my address. If connected is not true, show me connect wallet button. So what happens when I hit save here? Boom. All right, look at that. Oops. You see, it shows me my wallet connection right here, right? So my wallet address is 8tkz, right? It's not the full address, right? It's just whatever static thing I wrote. So let's go back to this. I'm not sure what this is. Oh, I think I opened up the SVG. All right, perfect. Cool. So I can literally make this anything. I can say LOL, right? So now when I'm connected, that's what it looks like. If I hit disconnect, and then we do something like this. Oh yeah, connected is still true, right? So even though I disconnected, right, it's still gonna say LOL. So let me just connect it real quick. But if I change the connection to false, right, which we set up, I believe over here, then it's back to connect wallet. You see that? Cool. So we need to make this dynamic, and we also want to change this SVG here. Not this SVG, sorry. We also want to change this to our actual address. And how do we do that? Well, we have something called truncate. Right? Truncate is essentially a function that's going to take my public key and make it to something more readable. So if I do this to string, oh, there you go. There you go. So it's undefined, right? And I know it's undefined because what is public key, right? You can't do a public key of undefined. And public key is something I'm passing down already, but it's not, it doesn't exist. If I go to index, I go to header, there's no public key, right? There's not even a public key anywhere here, right? No results, right? So how do I make public key exist? Well, that's where we can do something called use wallet. All right, so let's go over here. We don't want the static connected, right? We want a dynamic one. So we want to check the connection of our app, right? There is actually a hook that does that for us already. So let's do this, use wallet, right? And if you see, we need to import use wallet from Solana wallet adapter React. So again, we don't have to write any logic, right? Solana wallet adapter has the logic. We just got to plug it in. So say const, and I'll separate this so it's easier. Say const object or curly braces, right? Because this is deconstructing, and then use wallet, right? So this is the hook. What do we want from use wallet? We can break it down by saying we want connected and public key, right? So what does connected do? Connected will let us know if we have a wallet connected or not. So remember how we had true or false? We don't need to write that anymore. It will just automatically check if there's a wallet connected. Public key is our wallet address, right? So when we're connected, we have access to our wallet address, right? So it's gonna know it's 8T, right? So anytime you see public key, that's gonna be the public address of my wallet. So now when I pass down connected, it's not true or false, that variable, it's from the hook. Another thing that we wanna do, since we're here, is add that public key. So we can say public key is equal to public key. So now it shouldn't be undefined. If I hit save, let's go, right? Take a look at this, guys. That is our wallet address. It should look different from you if you have a different address, right? So let's connect wallet. Boom, we're connected. There's our address. We disconnect, it's gone, right? And it's dynamic because if I switch to wallet number 2, hit connect, I gotta log into wallet number 2. Bam, it's 4A now. There you go. You have your phantom connection, and now you made it dynamic to whatever user. So essentially, user can log in to the app. How's that? Amazing. So we have our phantom wallet connection set up. So what's next? So if we take a look at our plan, you'll notice that the next thing we need to do is actually set up the Solana program itself. So if you want to get started doing that, the cool part is we won't have to code on VS Code for a while. We can actually go to this website. So let me make this bigger. And let's go ahead and write beta.sol.pg.io. This is called Solana Playground, right? If you're coming from Solidity, if you heard of Remix at all, this is essentially the remix for Solana. What does that all mean? It means, right, you can go into here and create a Solana project. You can build and deploy through here, and you can test all your functions, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new project, right? And we can call this Airbnb Solana. And another cool thing, it's just new, we can also, it has Seahorse support, which means we can write Python with Solana. And we might do a video about that soon. So drop a comment below if you want to see us do a Python video with Solana. That could be really fun. So we're going to be using Anchor. So let's hit create. And now we have this right here. So what I'm going to do is make sure we build on this. Boom, build successful. Yep, cool. So this is essentially the starter files for our project, okay? So what I'm gonna do next is go to the files, and I'm actually gonna just delete everything because I wanna start us from bare bones scratch, right? We gave you a lot of the front end. I'm not gonna give you any of the Anchor code, right? We're gonna build this from scratch together. How does that sound? Good? All right, so if you're with me, let's get started. Now, before we get too excited writing Solana code, what we want to do first is we need to save the changes we made so far, right? We did a lot of phantom stuff. So open up your VS Code. And if you did a git push, right, you'll notice that it says, for me, everything up to date. But for you guys, you're not going to have permission, right? So let's make our very own repo to save your changes, right? And I'll walk you guys through. So go ahead, make a new tab and head over to github.com. And there's multiple different ways of creating repositories. Use Kraken or whatever third-party app you have. I'm gonna go ahead and click new repository, right? And from here we can say Solana Airbnb, right? Cool. Oh, I already have one. We can do Airbnb Solana. There you go. Cool. And then you can make this public or private, but let's just not click anything else and click create repository. If you do it that way, you'll see, right, that GitHub tells you exactly how to create a new repository, right? But we're gonna do something a little bit different than these steps right here. Cool. So going back to your VS Code, right, this is already a repo, right? The CLI starter branch is coming from another repo. How do we make this your own? Well, all you have to do is say git remote set URL origin, and then let's copy this link right here, okay? So I'm gonna bring this back, then let's paste that, and let's hit enter. Boom, right? So from here, we can say git status, right? And notice how it has the context because we added that, and we can just do a git add dot. And if we do git status again, now it's gonna be green, right? The package JSON is red because if you do a cd dot dot, then do a git add. Let's check it out. Boom. So now it's all green. That's a good sign. What we can do next is a git commit -m initialized our own repo, right? You can put whatever comment. I'm gonna hit that. And if we do a git push, right, it's gonna push to our new repo. If I refresh this, bam, there we go, right? So you can push to your own repo now without changing any of our files, right? And you can see over here that David, right, who helped me work on the last app, is still a contributor as well. Okay, so now you can save your code, and anytime you make a new change, I encourage you to push those changes on GitHub. Okay, so that's my quick GitHub lesson. The reason why we did this, guys, is because I want to show you guys that we can deploy our app and make it live, right? So today we're going to be using DigitalOcean. So there's going to be a link in the description. Right, go ahead and click that link so it makes the sign up process a lot quicker. So that link should take you to this beautiful landing page made by our friends at DigitalOcean. And if you use that link, we get $100 to learn with DigitalOcean. Okay, so go ahead and sign up and create a free account. I recommend you use GitHub because it'd be a lot faster. Boom. So I signed up through GitHub, and once you have everything set up for DigitalOcean, go ahead and click apps. And this is what we're gonna need to do right here. So what is DigitalOcean? DigitalOcean is infrastructure as a service. What does that mean? Well, this web page hosts multiple servers that we as developers can use for ourselves, right? One of the use cases that we're gonna be using today is creating a static server live app, right? You can also connect it to a database, right? You can use Kubernetes, and then we can also create an app, of course. So click create an app. You'll see create resource from source code. I want to click GitHub. So click on that, and wherever you want to use. The next thing I want to do is find my Airbnb Solana, which is going to be this one. Cool. And this is the branch. and this is the source directory, right? So this is one that's important, right? What's the source directory? It should be the directory of the front end, right? So what you want to type in is /frontend right here. Okay, and the cool part about DigitalOcean is that it has an auto deploy feature. So remember I said every time you make an update, we want to push those changes. Every time you push those changes, auto deploy will redeploy your app so that's always the latest version and it's synced with this repo, right? So that's super awesome. Go ahead and hit next, right? Go ahead and hit next, 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 right? We don't have any environmental variables set up just yet, right? So we can just click create resources. And let's see, is there anything else? All right, cool. Awesome, so our app is called C-Linen. You're free to change it as soon as it's done to whatever URL name that you want for this project. And from there, we're just gonna let it build. All right, so the build is complete now. What we could do is click on the live app. And there we go, all right? This is live. You can take this link, and I always say you could share it with your friends. You could put it on your portfolio. And at the current moment, you can only connect your wallet, and that works. So cool. So anytime you push changes to your repo, your live link should be up to date. So that's it for a live link. Let's get back to Solana Playground. Okay, so moving on, we're back at the lib.rs, and to get started, what I want you guys to do is type in the word use, right? The reason why I'm typing in use is this is the way on Anchor to import, right? So you know import from JavaScript, use, right, is gonna get Anchor Lang. If you don't know what Anchor Lang is, it's a library for Anchor, right? And we want to get certain things from this library, or crate, sometimes it's called, right? So what we want to do, we want to get something specific from Anchor Lang. So within Anchor Lang, I want something called Prelude, okay? And then you can, if you go : think of this as going inside a folder, right? First, it's Airbnb Solana, and inside we go to the front end, and inside we go to index.js, right? So within Prelude, right, if I do a star here, we want everything within Prelude as well. Awesome, so that's our first import that we'll do for now. What you wanna do is type in a semicolon here. If you didn't know, unlike JavaScript, right, we need to put semicolons here to indicate the end of the line. Otherwise, we get an error, okay? Cool, awesome. And then from there, we can do a hashtag, square brackets, program, right? This is essentially a macro, which is going to define what a program is. So what you write directly underneath this is the program. So from there, we can say pub mod clever underscore Airbnb, right? And then if you put curly brackets right here, this is the scope of our program, okay? So if you guys are with me, you're in a good spot. All right, the next thing I want to do, in between these two things, let's declare ID. Oops, declare underscore ID, and then put exclamation point, and then put parentheses. Okay, so every program has a unique key, right, which represents the address of that program, right? That's where it is on the blockchain, right? And Solana Playground will generate you a program ID if you click this toolbar right here on the left-hand side, click copy, and then you could just paste that there. That's your program ID. It's gonna be different from mine, of course. So if I hit build, oh yeah, I just mentioned we need a semicolon here. Hit build, it should say build successful, right? So that means this is a valid program, right? If I asked you, does this do anything at the moment? It does absolutely nothing because there is nothing, right? So let's make it do something, right? Let's give it functionality, okay? So what we can do is we can say pub fn, right? Fn is function, right? In JavaScript, to make a function, I would write something like this: function add user, right? It would look something like this, right? For Rust or with Anchor, you can say pub fn and then the name, initialize user, right? Then you put parentheses, right? And then you can do this, an arrow, and write in result, like so. And there you go. cool. So this entire thing is a function, right? Oh, okay, so don't mind that. What we could do next is, all right, so don't mind that error, it'll fix itself in a second. What we do care about is this function right here. So this is initializing a user, right? Basically, what we want to do with this program is create accounts or create a PDA, right? So just temporarily, we want to create a PDA, right? You might ask, what is a PDA? Well, PDA stands for a profile derived account, right? Essentially, right, we want to create accounts, right? Or PDAs. PDAs are essentially accounts created from the Solana program, right? And we could do this to hold certain amount of data. I'm simplifying this, but what kind of account do you think initialize user should create, right? Initialize user, oops, should create a user account with default data. Okay, so what we want to do is have this program create a user account which stores all of our user information. Okay, cool. So in order to create a PDA, we have to give it some context. So what we could do is pass in context as a parameter, right? So all I have to write is CTX. Okay, if I was going to add two numbers, it could be like num1, num2, right? This should look familiar. In this case, we're going to do CTX, right? And with anchor, you need to specify the type. What type is CTX looking for? Well, it's going to look for context, right? And this is a struct in anchor, right? And the type of context, it's going to be initialize user, right? To understand what I mean by this is, I'll ask you this. Does initialize user exist anywhere on our app? No, it does not, right? So that means we're gonna have to create it later on. So usually when we create a function, this is the pattern. We create the function, it's gonna take in a context, and the context usually has a similar name to the function we created, okay? So we're gonna hit pause on the function, right? And we're gonna move on to creating some structs. So at the end of your scope down here, let's create the initialize user struct, okay? So to create a PDA, right? Create the context, right? All right, what we wanna do is do hashtag derive parenthesis accounts, right? So again, it's similar to program, right? In this case, what you write underneath this macro right here is going to be the PDA or the context, right? So we can say pub struct and then this right here, this name, pub struct initialize user, right? And then you're just gonna write info, okay? After writing that, you can put curly brackets right here, and then you can do hashtag account mute, right? We're making this mutable, meaning this can change, right? What can change? Whatever I put underneath here. So the authority, right? What does the authority represent? Whenever you're working with Solana and you make a transaction, Phantom will open up and ask you to approve that transaction, right? So if I want to send money to someone, you have to approve the transaction because you have the authority, right? So here, when I say pub authority, what kind of type should it expect? It's going to expect a signer, right? And the signer is one of the things that come from the anchor lang, anchor prelude, right? So this we don't have to create, okay? And it's going to be mutable because the authority is going to depend on the user. It's not one static thing, okay? So now for the actual creation of the account itself, okay? So to create the account, we can say hashtag square brackets count init, oops, and actually say enter here. It's going to take in a couple things now. It's going to be init, right? If you write this, Anchor automatically initialize an account for you, so we don't have to set any of that up. What you do need to set up is the seeds, right? You can think of seeds as a variable that will create a unique hash or address for your PDA, Okay. For now, it takes in strings, right? But I'm gonna write something here. It's gonna say user tag, right? Which is gonna be a string, but it's the variable holding the string. But pause that for now. It's also gonna take our authority dot key, right? Dot as reference. Okay. Cool. And then from there, we're gonna write bump. Okay. So whenever this will make more sense later. But let's say that hash exists. Bump will just go to the next available hash. Okay. Cool. So who's paying for storing this data, right, or running this transaction? It should be the authority, right? Who's ever the owner of this user should pay for it. The next thing that the account is going to need is the space, right? Because with Anchor or just Solana and Rust in general, they care about how much space does it take, right? It needs to know. So to figure out how much space it takes, right, you got to think of what does the user need to hold, right? So if you're thinking about what a user needs to hold, I'm thinking that it needs to store its authority, its last Airbnb, and how many Airbnbs does it have, right? So if I were to show you guys what an object would look like, right? So let's say user1 is equal to object, and let's see if I can make this. Oops. Okay, let's make it like this, right? User1 has a key of the authority, right? And then the authority is going to equal 8t, right? This is my account from Phantom, right? It's also going to have the last Airbnb, right? Which I'll say is 0, right? And then it's also going to have Airbnb count. Think of Airbnb count as the total amount of Airbnbs, and that should start at 0, right? Each of these things are going to take different space depending on the type, right? So this right here, this authority is going to be type public key, and a public key is going to take up 32 bytes usually. This U8, we can say that it can just be 1, right? Same thing with this. This can also is a U8, an unsigned integer, 8 bytes. You can just say 1. Okay. So in terms of space, it's essentially 32 plus 1, oops, plus 1 plus 1, right, plus 8, right? The reason why I'm doing plus 8 here is because there's something called an account discriminator that is gonna be added, right, to essentially make space between this account and the next account, right? So when I say plus 8, this is what it means. Okay, cool. So that's how much space it takes up. Don't worry if this makes much sense yet. Right, we're going to be doing it over and over till you get the pattern. Got it? Cool. So that's it for the space in terms of this account right here. And remember, underneath it is all this information is going to go. So this is going to be what we'll call the user profile, right? And the user profile, it's going to expect a type of box, which is holding an account, right? Which is what we're creating. And that account is going to have info, comma, user profile. Okay, awesome. And then account is something from AnchorLang, and so is a box, right? But user profile, right, is an actual struct that we need to create. It doesn't exist yet either, right? So let's follow this pattern, right? So initialize user, it's a context. The context of what initializing a user is that it will have an authority, and that's going to have a user profile. But then we need to define what the hell is a user profile, right? So we need to create this later as well. Okay, cool. And then we could say pub system program, and then we could say program, right? This is built in. You're gonna write this over and over for the other context again. So it's gonna be info and then system. Perfect. Okay, cool. So we finished the context. If I were to run this, it would fail because user profile, it's not going to know what that is, right? So to define what a user profile is, we can actually make that struct here, right? Pub struct, and then you can say user profile, right? Or, right, we can make another file, right? We don't have to put everything in one file, or else it could get really bloated. right? So what I'll do is create a new file, and then you can go over here and call this one states. Okay. And within this states, we also want to import anchor lang prelude, and we'll get the star. Cool. Semicolon. Awesome. All right, so what did we do? We defined the context for initializing user. We then need to define what that account looks like. So let's define the user account, right? So to define an account, we're gonna say an account, right? And we're gonna do hashtag derive default, right? Okay. Then underneath, we're gonna say pub struct user profile. Cool. Awesome. And then remember what I said, it's gonna take in an authority, right? And what's the type of authority that it'll expect? It's gonna be a public key. It's also gonna take in a last Airbnb, which will be an unsigned integer 8, right? And then also gonna be Airbnb, count u8. Okay, cool. And remember, just so you remember how much space each type takes, right? I can write it right here. So this is 32, this should be 1, and this should be 1 as well, right? So that's where I'm getting those numbers. Well, so this is the account for a user. This is the user account, okay? Here's a question. If I would run this, it would still fail, right? It's still gonna fail because why, right? Does user profile exist on this page? It does not, right? So how do we make it exist on this page, right? Think of this import right here, right? So what we want to do is say pub mod states, right? And then we'll say use, right? Here's use again, create colon, and we'll say states colon star, right? Basically what I'm saying with this is get me everything from states, right? So what's in states? All of this. Give me all of it, right? And bring it to this scope right here. So that means I can call user profile in here in this scope. Okay. We will need to do one more thing, right? We can erase this, and what we can write is use super colon star semicolon, right? What the hell did I just do? Well, remember how I said this brings states to this scope, right? Use super takes anything from this scope into the program scope. So I can refer to user profile as normal. Okay, so it should know that this exists. Okay, cool. So just want to make sure it's still there. States, awesome. All right, and if I were to run this, it'll still give me an error because this user tag here. It was gonna say, what the hell is user tag? And like I said, this is a variable that's gonna hold in a string, right? So the seeds that it takes in to generate that hash is gonna be a string, and then my public key, essentially, right? So let's define this variable, right? So you can say like something like const user tag, right, is equal to, right, and then define it here. But just to keep in with our pattern, we can make another file. So I'm going to do that as well, and I'll call this constant.rs. So now I have constant.rs, and what I'll do next, it should be anchor lang prelude, right? Anchor lang colon prelude colon star, boom. Not 8, semicolon. Okay. All right. So here we can define our constants, right? So, right, again, there's nothing wrong with putting it all in one file, right? I'm just showing you guys that you can separate it. So I'll say constant here, and then we could say pub const user tag, right? And then we can reference itself as a u8 is equal to the string user state, right? Cool. All right, so now we have user tag and that state set up in the file called constant, and then we need to get the constant. So get pub mod constant. Okay, And then here we can write constant, colon star, parentheses, right? And use super, we'll take that from this scope and bring it into this scope. Cool, so it should know what user tag is and it shouldn't give us an error. Okay, cool. So last but not least, on the function, before we write any logic, usually in a function we need a return. If you write okay here, think of that as a return in JavaScript, right? Let's say I wanted to return the number 5, you would put that right here. If I leave it blank, it's not returning anything, it's just gonna run the logic and then be like, okay, done. All right, so if I hit build, there shouldn't be any errors now. Awesome, so this means the build is successful, right? We're only gonna get warnings. Warnings aren't bad, right? If you see something like a warning, it just says unused variable CTX, right? Because that's true. It's just letting you know, like, hey, you put this here, but you aren't using it. So don't worry about warnings, right? It's errors that really matter. So we have the initialize user set up. Now let's just write the logic for it. Okay, so all the setup is done. Let's write the logic of initializing the user, right? And again, if you remember, we want to initialize the user profile account with default data, right? If you go back to your states here, this doesn't have any values associated with it. It's just an authority that's expecting a pub key. It's just expecting a number, right? But it doesn't have a value. So what number should it start with, right? How many Airbnb should each user have at the beginning? Right? It should have 0. All right, so if it has 0, let's get that information and set it up. Okay, so first thing we gotta do is say a variable, let, right, user underscore profile, right? Nothing too crazy. This is just one variable, and we can set that variable equal to and mute, right? So this mute here is saying that this variable can change depending on the user profile, right? When JavaScript, right, when I make a variable, let num equal 1, right? If I wanted to redefine the value for this, I can say num is equal to 9, right? If I did this in Rust, right, it would say, I would give an error because I'm not allowed to change this, right? I can change it or make it mutable by writing mute, okay? And then I can say CTX. What is CTX, right? If I were to console log CTX, if I could do that in Anchor, I would see this initialize user context, right? Cool. Well, what do I want from that? If I do dot accounts, right, and then do dot, and then let's look in here. If I do dot user profile, then I should see the object itself, right, the user struct. So I can say user underscore profile. There we go. Cool. So when I say user profile, I essentially get this struct or this account, or if you're JavaScript, this object. Okay. So if user profile is giving me an object, right? I'm saying object because I'm thinking JavaScript. How can I get the total amount of Airbnbs, right? What do I write after this to get the Airbnb count? If you remember dot notation, all I have to do is just write dot Airbnb count, right? And what do you want to initialize that count to be, right? If you're just making a user, how many Airbnbs should they have? They should have 0, and there we go. Okay, from there, let's just do the rest of them. So I'll say user profile dot authority is equal to CTX dot accounts, right? I'm getting this again, right? And I want to get my authority here, right? And remember this, the pub authority, we can call on that. So if I say dot authority, right, I can get the key by calling the built-in method here key, okay? And set that equal to this key, right? Cool, this stays the same, right? But we could also add user profile dot what else are we missing? All right, I need his last Airbnb, right? So the last Airbnb is going to be last Airbnb equal to 0 as well. Okay, awesome. And guess what, guys? That's it for initializing a user. So what can we do next? Well, let's hit build. Let's hope for no errors. Hey, build successful, right? It doesn't look like there's any unused variable either. So let me just refresh this to show you guys, right? Clean terminal, hit build. build successful, not even any warnings. So super clean code, right? Now the cool part, the reason why we're on Solana Playground is that we can build, but we can also deploy, right? What does deploy mean? It means I'm gonna take this program or this smart contract and deploy it on the Solana blockchain, right? And when we deploy it on chain, we can then get this program by its address and then call any of the functions towards it. So let's deploy it, right? And when you deploy, it's gonna ask you to connect to your Solana Playground wallet. So that's gonna be on this left-hand corner here. So click on that to connect your Playground wallet. If you hit deploy and it says you don't have enough Solana, what you could do is click this wallet, click this right here, and click airdrop. And this will help you get Solana Sol, right? So there it is. I got 2 Sol just now. All right, so do that to get enough Solana to deploy the contract. You shouldn't need much to deploy it since it's not that big yet. Cool. So not only did I got 2 Sol, the deployment was also a success, which means if you hit this cool test tube here, we can see the user, right? And another thing, right? It's reading. So basically Solana Playground is reading the program and it's saying, oh, here are all your functions and here are all the accounts you set up, which makes sense, right? We have a user profile account and initialize a user. All right. So did this program create any users at the moment? Let's click fetch all. And you can see it's fetching all the user accounts and you'll see an array empty because we didn't create any accounts. Our function right here, initialize user, should create an account, right? So let's go ahead and test this function works. And maybe you'll understand a lot better after we test it. So the authority, remember the authority is expecting a public key right here. And it's also the signer, right? So that should be your address, your Playground wallet address or your Phantom wallet address. So you're just gonna click that drop down, click my address, and you're good to go. Now, here's the important part for you to understand. It also needs a user profile, right? It needs an address for your PDA, right? At the moment, we don't have a place to put that data for the user account, right? We can get that address or that hash, through seeds, right? So which is user tag, which is what, guys? A string, and then your own authority. All right, so if you click this, you want to click from seed, right? And you want to write in that string. So you don't write user tag here. This would be wrong. What you want to do is type in the value of this. This is a variable, right? And the variable is going to equal user state. So that's what you want to write. You want to write user underscore state. All right, this is important because you're going to do it again later. Okay, so the next seed, right? There's one user state string, and then the authority, which is just going to be copy this and then paste it here, and then it'll generate a unique hash. And this is where that user account will be living. So if I hit test, boom, look at that, test passed. I love seeing that. And now if I fetch a user profile, there we go. This object right here represents a user. So how many users do we have, guys? We have uno, right? We have 1, right? And you can see how many Airbnbs total. He has 0. What was the index of his last Airbnb? 0. Okay, cool. And also it has the authority, and there's the public key right there. So I hope that makes sense to you. We're gonna do this over and over again with the functions, and hopefully it's gonna stick. All right, so let's work on the next function. All right, so moving right along, let's create our next function, which is gonna be adding an Airbnb, I believe, right? We wanna add or create an Airbnb. So let's go back to Playground and let's set it up. All right, so how do we create a function, guys? Well, it's gonna be pub fn add Airbnb. All right, it's gonna take in context, of course, and we can write arrow result like so. Okay, cool. So I wanna move faster and faster as we do these functions because the pattern is gonna be very similar, right? What is different is the logic here. So we want to basically initialize an Airbnb account with information passed in, right? What does that mean? That means we're gonna take more than context in this function right here. So what I'll do is I'll press enter, and we can also press enter, and we can actually leave it like this, right? So it's gonna take in context, it's gonna take a location, it's gonna take in, right? It's It's gonna take in a country, right? What else goes into an Airbnb? If I look back, it's gonna take in price, right? Price, and it's gonna take in an image URL, right? And we can't forget with Rust, we need to type in the type, and context is gonna be the similar, right? What's the pattern, guys? For context, it should be the same name as the function most of the time. And we can say add Airbnb, right? Does this exist yet? Nope, not yet. All right, so we have to make it eventually. So keep that in mind. Location, location. When I'm running this function, right? What should location be? Should it be a number? No, it should be a string. That's kind of how you want to think about this. So same thing with country, string, right? Price, string, right? And this is interesting, right? I'm doing price and I'm doing it as a string, right? Because in our Airbnb clone, right? When I want to add the price, I'm inputting it as a string, right? It doesn't have to be a number, right? If you did want to make it a number, you can put U8 here, okay? But let's make it a string. And for image URL, we also want this to be a string. Boom. Okay, so all the parameters are set, right? We're gonna take these parameters later and apply it to our Airbnb account. But right now we don't have our Airbnb account set up, right? So let's set up the context first. Let's create the Airbnb context. Okay, so how do we create the PA context? Well, we need the derive accounts again. So we're gonna derive accounts. And then, let's see. Oh yeah, we also wanna do instruction here. And this is new. We're gonna say instruction, boom. Okay, cool. Instruction, right, make sure I spelled that correctly. Cool, so we got these two macros set up. Let's write pub struct, and then if you remember what I wrote, it was add Airbnb, put in the info right here, and then after that, curly brackets. Bam, that's the struct for the context. And here, we're gonna say hash account, right? And I wanna get the user profile, right? So here I essentially created or initialized a user account. And here I want to use that same user account, right? So to do that, instead of saying init, right? Oops, init, I'm gonna say mute, right? Because when I add an Airbnb, it could be different users. I can add an Airbnb, you can add an Airbnb, Kazi can add an Airbnb, right? So I'll say mute. And seeds, right? So seeds, if this is gonna be a user profile, what seeds do we need to fetch a user, right? How did we generate this seed? Well, we took in a string, right? That string was called user tag, right? To find that user that we're talking about. And we also need to do authority.key.asRef, okay? Cool. And then we also need to add bump, right? And then has one authority, right? Who has control over this Airbnb? It should be one person, right? Kazi shouldn't be able to mess with my Airbnb accounts, right? So we can say has one equals authority. Okay, and then directly underneath this, you can write pub user profile, which is expecting a box that holds an account, right, which is holding the account of a user profile, and that's the account that this box is holding. Okay, that's how you can read it. Boom. Okay, so we have a user profile, right? We need this so that we can determine who owns this Airbnb, right? Who has authority over it. Then we need to actually have the Airbnb account. So if I ask you guys, do we have an Airbnb account set up, right? We do not. We only have a user profile set up, right? So how did we create a new account? It's gonna be very similar to this. So if you get lost, keep this in mind. Okay, so again, to start, we're gonna say hashtag account, right? And hit enter here. And how do we initialize an account with Anchor? We say init. We take in seeds, right? But it's not gonna take in user tag this time, right? The seeds that to make or generate the public key of this Airbnb account is going to be Airbnb tag, right? Another variable, right? Which we'll make later. It's also going to take in our authority, right? So that's the same. .asRef, right? But what also helps us generate a unique hash will be to put the index of the user, right? I need to know what was the last index of the Airbnb. So if this was the first Airbnb, the last index should be 0, right? So if I make a second Airbnb, the last index would be 1, right? So that's gonna help us generate a unique one, so we don't get the same thing over and over, right? We're just gonna say user profile, right? We have access to this because we have user profile. And then we can get dot last Airbnb, right? And that's it, right? So that's how we get the unique hash. And these are the 3 seeds that it takes, 3 variables that generate a unique hash like this, okay? From there, we just need to write bump, and then who pays for the space or the creation of this account should be the same as the authority. And the space, right? Let's look at, well, we're gonna need to think about what an Airbnb account is. So we'll come back to space in a second. Just know that there's gonna be an 8 here. Okay, so I can write pub Airbnb account. That's gonna be a box that holds an account, right? And that account is going to be an Airbnb account. Awesome. Okay, so you'll notice right away, this is the Airbnb account that we need to create. So what I'll do is let's define what that is. So go to states, right? We're in states now. And now that we're in states, we can create the Airbnb account itself. So to do that, same thing as above, right? Just gonna write that this is an account, right? And it's gonna derive default. And then we can say pub struct Airbnb account, right? Make sure it's spelled exactly the same as you wrote it here, okay? Just wanna make sure. Cool. All right, so hopefully this will help you understand it a little bit more if you didn't understand what the user account was. When I have an Airbnb account, I mean, what is the information that describes an Airbnb, right? So let's think about this. Every Airbnb, right, is going to need a location. What's the location of this Airbnb? And the type of that is going to be a string. It should start to look familiar, right? What about, you know where it is, right? But where is that location located, right? So you would describe that as the country. What country is this in, right? Okay, what else do we need? Well, we also need the price, right? And again, this could be an integer, but we can also do it as a string. Okay, cool. What about an image? Yeah, it's gonna need an image, right? Cool. So an image, and we can say string as well. And we're gonna say pub price, right? And that's gonna be a string as well. Wait, no, I did the price already. We need one more thing. We need location, country, price, image, and oh, this is another thing that's gonna be important later, but it's gonna be is reserved. And usually you write this in snake case, but in our front end we have it camel case. So I'm gonna write it as that. It doesn't have to be written this way, right? I'm just gonna write it like this. Cool. So this are the keys to our Airbnb object, right? Now translate it to us. This is a struct, and all of this is what makes up that struct. Okay, cool. So that's our Airbnb account, right? One thing is that I do realize that we're missing is we need to keep track of the authority, and that's gonna be type public key. And we also need to keep track of the index, which I'll write as IDX. Okay, cool. All right, so this is it, the full thing. Now this should be defined, right? So now this exists, and now we can work on how much space does this account take up? Well, if we're gonna do the same thing here, let's think about it. Pub key is 32, right? Index 1. Location is gonna be a string. This is gonna be unique because a string is usually 4 plus how long do you expect the string to be, right, in characters, right? So I say 256 is the max that we can expect. And then same thing with country, 4 plus 256. And then price, this could be 4 plus 256, right? Again, you can make this smaller, but just know that if you make the location longer than this many characters or bytes, it may fail, right? For the URL, it's gonna be 4 plus 2048, right? Because this is the longest URL string that you can have, okay? And now we can do, for a Boolean, usually that's gonna be 8. Okay, cool. So all of this together, it should equal up to, I have it here. Oh yeah, 2,865. Just did a quick addition on my calculator on the side, but there you go. So this is how much space it takes up, plus the account discriminator that I was talking about. Okay, cool. One last thing we'll need is the account authority, right? Remember this? This is the part that I said you're gonna repeat. The authority is gonna be the signer. And this is going to be system program info system. Boom. Okay. All right. And is there anything else that I need? No, I think that's it. Oh, I just remembered Airbnb tag would be undefined here. I'm going to go to my constants and let's define that real quick. And it's going to be the same thing as above. You just do constant pub const Airbnb tag, right? And again, you don't have to name this Airbnb tag, just name it whatever variable you want. And it's going to equal a string, right, that says Airbnb state. So what do I write when I'm generating a seed? I write the string. I don't write Airbnb tag, okay? Because this is a variable holding the string. Good? Awesome. Okay, so now that that's defined, shouldn't be any errors, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is. Mismatched types. Oh, I see. Yeah, we didn't even finish the function, guys. So let's do that real quick. Yeah, so we have all of the, we have the structs and the context set up. We need to now write the function, duh. So let me just write the function. Let's hit enter right here. So let's make a variable. Let's say let Airbnb account, right? So what am I doing with this variable here? What do I want to set it equal to? Think about user profile. What did I set that equal to? I set it equal to the context and I got the user profile. So what I could do with this one is set it equal to the context, right? And remember, this can change. So we want to do mute, right? And if I do dot accounts, now I'm in here, right? And I want to grab the Airbnb account. So in the accounts, I can say dot Airbnb account. Okay, cool. Awesome. I will also need the user profile. And that's because I need to set the index of the Airbnb as the user profile's last Airbnb. Okay, so let's do that. Let user profile is going to be and mute ctx dot accounts. Let's grab the user profile. And now we need to fill the contents of Airbnb account with all the arguments here. All right, so if I write Airbnb account, if I were to console log this in JavaScript, I'd see an object, right? How do I get the authority? I say dot authority, right? What should I set this equal to? I mean, to get the actual key, right, you can say context.counts.authority.key. All right, that should work because inside here, I can get the authority from this right here. And .key, we'll get it in a format that it likes. Awesome. What's next? Airbnb account.index. Set that equal to user profile, right? Calling this variable. And from this object, get the, it should be the same as his last Airbnb. Okay. And then we can do Airbnb underscore account dot location is equal to location, right? This location is coming from this argument. Okay, Airbnb account, we need country, and I'm just gonna quickly move through the rest of it. This should makes sense. Equal to price, Airbnb account dot image is equal to image, and then we need Airbnb account dot is reserved equal to false, right? Notice how I'm not using any of the arguments. I know when I first make an Airbnb, it shouldn't be reserved or not. It shouldn't be reserved already, it should just be false. Are we done? Nope, not yet, because I can set the index to the last Airbnb, but if I don't change that last Airbnb, it's gonna be the same index, it's gonna be 0, 0, 0, 0. So let's increment it. Multiple ways to increase Airbnb index for PDA, right? So user profile is another reason why we initialize this. User profile dot last Airbnb, is equal to user profile dot last Airbnb, right? And I'm just hit enter here and say dot checked add, right? Essentially check or increment it, right? And then dot unwrap it. Cool. Just to simplify what this is doing, it's basically setting the last Airbnb to be whatever it was plus 1. We will also need to do this for the total Airbnb count, right? How many Airbnbs does this user have, right? Well, it's going to be user profile dot Airbnb count, right, is equal to the user profile dot Airbnb count, right? So if he had 0 Airbnbs after he makes this first one, he should also have 1 as the count, right? So we can do dot checked add 1 and dot unwrap it to get it in the right format. Cool. Notice how I can put enter here because the semicolon is what marks the end of the line, right? And there is check add, but there's also check sub, check multiply that we could use later. Awesome. All right, from there, let's go ahead and write the OK. And again, this is like kind of like a return, and let's see if there's any errors. Got it. So it says accounts.authority.key is an unknown field. All right, so I gotta double check any spelling or missing semicolons. That's usually what it is. So let's see. Okay. So I forgot to define the type of this. U8. Okay, and I think it said it had something to do with this. This looks good. This looks good. Is this wrong? Oh, that's good. Oh, a comma right here. And then it had something wrong with this box account info. Oh, I forgot to close this off. There we go. Oh, I said, see how this color is off? It didn't finish closing off for the box. So now let's try, let's hit build. Hey, build successful. And we do get one warning, and it's this Boolean or mentioned here, right? It should be snake case. It should, in best practice, should be like this is reserved. But again, just for this project, I'm gonna do it camel case because when I pull it from the front end, I don't have to change anything on my front end. Okay, cool. So if you look here, right, we have the Airbnb instruction and the Airbnb account, but we can't test it just yet because we need to upgrade the build first. So you will need some Solana to upgrade your build, and it's going to cost you more than last time. But since we're on the DevNet, we should be good to go. And in case you're getting any errors with Phantom, right? Like if you were getting any errors previously with connection, go make sure you click settings and make sure you are on the right network. You should be on DevNet, not mainnet, right? Because this specific playground is also on DevNet. All right, make sure it all matches. Okay, so it's almost done deploying, and bam. Okay, so we upgraded our smart contract. We didn't make a new deployment, right? So how many users do we have? We have 1 user. How many Airbnbs do we have created? Right, we have none, right? So how do we create an Airbnb account? Well, that's what add Airbnb does. So let's do this. Let's make a location, let's say space. Or actually, no, location should be a rocket ship, right? The country, right? I'm not gonna be traditional. Let's say space. The price, 9999, and the image. So for image, let's use Unsplash. I think I have it saved for spaceship. Let's use this one right here. pretty cool. They're on Mars. So back to playground. You can literally paste this image here. And now this is the context part, the accounts, right? So what user is creating this account, right? So let's fetch users. It can only be one user creating this account. And what is that user's public key, right? So what's the PDA of that user? It's going to be this right here. Cool. What's the authority? We can answer that question. It should be my address, my public key, right? The public key who also owns this user. Okay, so what's the PDA of the Airbnb account, right? That's not created just yet, right? That's gonna get created through the seeds, right? So this is what you need to put for the seeds. So let's do from seed, Airbnb tag, right? Shouldn't be Airbnb tag, should be Airbnb state, right? Next is the pub key, which should be your address, which I can copy here, or you can get it from my authority. And last but not least, it does take in a number, right? So I believe it should be a U8. You can double check that right here. Yeah, user profile, last Airbnb, and the last Airbnb is a U8. Okay, so it takes in a U8, and since it hasn't made anything, it should be 0, right? I can double check that here, 0. Okay. So let's hit generate. There you go. It generated a unique hash from the seeds. And then if we hit test, let's go. It passed, boys and girls. So now what does that mean? If I fetch an Airbnb account, we have one Airbnb in this array, right? Think of it as an object, right? So when we fetch this later, we can take the information and map it through our listing items, right? Can you kind of start to visualize how we're doing this? So this is good. I hope this is starting to make more sense. We have a couple more functions to go. So let's keep on going. Okay, so moving right along, let's get back to our lib. And what we can do next is now let's do edit the Airbnb, or what I'll say is update Airbnb. So let's create that function, pub fn update Airbnb. Okay. Okay, and then we can do this arrow, result, like so, and then curly brackets. There we go. So that's updating Airbnb. You can hit enter here, and it's going to take in a couple arguments as well, right? So of course it's going to take in the context, and the context, which we'll need to make later, is update Airbnb. Okay, and from here it's going to take in the index, U8, location, string. Right. We need to pass all of this in because depending on what we want to do, we want to change the location. Maybe you want to update the country. Maybe you want to just change everything, right? So let's pass in everything and only keep what we need. Okay, so location, country, price, and they're all going to be type string. Okay, awesome. All right, and then in here, it's going to be the logic, but let's wait on that for a second and let's work on the context. All right, so you want to make context for updating Airbnb. What you have to do is just follow the same pattern as last time, right? So it's only going to get easier from here. We're just going to do accounts, and then we can say hashtag instruction again, but this time we're going to take in Airbnb IDX. Wait. Okay, cool. I would spell instruction wrong, instruction. Nice. Okay, cool. Underneath this, we gotta write pub struct update Airbnb info, curly bracket, and from there we can do the hashtag account again. Okay, and say enter here. Cool. So what I'm going to set up is the user profile. So if it's the user profile, right, we can do seeds is equal to user tag, right? And remember, this is user profile, right? So to get the user profile, we have to find it through the seed. So we're going to take in the user tag, the authority dot key dot as ref, and that should get us the hash that we need, right? And then bump, and then has 1. Okay, cool. This is all for the user profile. This isn't anything new. This is essentially what we did last time, right? We're getting access to the user profile again, and you could have literally copy and pasted this if you wanted to, but I'm just gonna write it out. Box account info user profile, comma. Cool. So this is how we're getting access to the user profile. When we're updating the Airbnb, we need access, right? Keyword access to the Airbnb account itself. So how do we get the Airbnb account? Well, it's going to be very similar as before. And let me not make the same mistake. Cool. Now this is the right color. So it's going to be similar to how we got the user profile. So we want to say mute here because it's going to be a different Airbnb account each time. We got to pass in the seeds to get that hash, which will be Airbnb tag authority.key .as underscore ref, comma, and right, it's a Airbnb index .as ref. Okay, cool. And then we can say bump. Okay, then we can say has one equals authority. All right, then we can say pub Airbnb account, and we can say box account info, and then what account that you're getting. I'm getting the Airbnb account, and there we go. So we got user profile, we got Airbnb account, right? And then we just need the usual stuff, which is the authority and system program, right? And I'll save you the time. You could just copy and paste this same thing here. Cool. And that's it for update Airbnb. Do I have to create an account again? No, because I'm using accounts that already exist. We already have a user profile account, and I already have an add Airbnb account. All right, so what we want to do now is just utilize the context, right? So this should go a lot simpler. So we're updating the Airbnb, and we just want to change it to whatever we pass in, right? So let's just get the Airbnb account, right? And set that equal to and mute context.accounts.airbnb account. Okay, cool. And then we can do Airbnb accounts that location, right, is equal to the location we pass in, right? Then we can get the country, set that equal to the country. Oops, semicolon, not comma. Okay, then we need Airbnb account again. The price is equal to the price, and Airbnb account dot image is equal to image. Okay, and then from there you just gotta do okay. And that's it. And now that I'm thinking about it, we're not actually using the user account at all. Yeah, because we don't need to update it because that user already has the authority. So you know what? Let's see. Let me go to here. Yeah, we're using the Airbnb index anyways, because before we were using user profile last Airbnb, but that should be the same as this anyways. So what I'll do is let's erase user profile, and this should still work. All right, that's update Airbnb. I just removed that. It should still build. Let's see if I missed anything. Hey, okay, so if we get the is reserved, that's fine. Line 59. Yes, we're not really using this, right? But we do need to pass it in. So let's just do that, because that's gonna come in handy later. Boom, so now we only have one warning, and it's the is reserved. That one I can live with, right? We can change that to snake case if you want, but it should be fine. Cool, so let's upgrade the contract, and let's test update Airbnb. Awesome, so it looks like it was successful. And now we have update Airbnb, so let's test it out. So when we update the Airbnb, let's pass in the index. I don't know from memory that we should only have 0, but we can double check. Index 0, perfect, okay. What's the location? Let's just say Dubai, right? And if you know where Dubai is, you set UAE as the abbreviation. We'll say 88. And for the image, right, I don't have an actual URL for this, but let's just say it's, I don't know, like, let's go back here. Let's just say Dubai. And I like this one. So let's take this, paste that here. Airbnb account. What Airbnb account should we pass in? Right? I don't need to create a new one, but we should just take the one that's already made because I know what it is. The authority is going to be me. And let's hit test. Hey, update your Airbnb passed. So this is what it looks like currently. The rocket ship in space. But if I do a fetch all now, you'll notice that it says do buy now, and we have a different image and a different price. And that's what updating an Airbnb should do. Cool. On to the next function. All right, so the next function that we're gonna create is gonna be removing an Airbnb, which is essentially deleting or closing the account, right? So let's go ahead and work on that. So if we wanna make a new function, you guys should know the drill by now. We're gonna say pub fn remove Airbnb. Okay, make the arrow result like so. Curly bracket, and bam, that's a function. All right, so now that we have our function, let's take in its arguments. And when we remove an Airbnb, all we need to know is the context, right? Which is gonna be context. And it's gonna take in remove Airbnb, which we'll make in a bit. It's also gonna take in the Airbnb index. Okay, and then we're just gonna say U8 for the type. Awesome. All right, and there's nothing really we have to do with the user profile besides decrement the total Airbnb count, right? So let's set up remove Airbnb. So I'm just gonna scroll down below here, hashtag derive accounts, hashtag instruction, Airbnb IDX U8. And then we're gonna do pub struct remove Airbnb. All right, so similar to update Airbnb, we do need to take in the index of the Airbnb we wanna remove, just like we take in the index of the Airbnb we wanna update. All right, so this needs info as well. And then we can do curly bracket. And from here, let's set up the user profile account. So we can say hashtag account. Can say mute, and then take in the seeds of the user. So what are the seeds that we need to get a user hash, which is gonna be user tag, and authority dot key dot as ref and comma. We'll add this bump here, and we'll say has one, which is equal to authority. Okay, cool. So with that done, this is what a user profile is. And the type that it expects is gonna be a box that holds an account. And what is that account? It's going to be a user profile account, which we created again in our states. Okay, amazing. Okay, so we have a user profile. We'll also need to get the Airbnb account, right? So then we'll do the account like this. Oops, then we'll say mute close is equal to authority, and then we'll say seeds is equal to Airbnb tag. Oops, this also takes in authority dot key dot dot as ref. And again, if you're ever confused what seeds do we put in, think back to when we initialize the Airbnb, right? This is the seeds that it uses to create the hash, right? And we can use the same seeds to get that key. So we can just say and Airbnb index dot as ref. Okay, and that should give us the Airbnb account that we want. Oh yeah, it's not done yet. We need bump has one as well. And that should be it. From there we could say pub Airbnb account, which is expecting a type of a box that holds an account. I feel like I'm getting really repetitive, but this is the same pattern, guys. So once you get used to it, think about what you need access to, right? That's my keyword. And what do you want to do with it, right? So we have user profile, Airbnb account, and we can copy this because it's the same thing. the context will need the authority and the system program. Now, quick question, do I need to make any accounts or create any new states here? Nope, I'm just reusing these again that are created and getting the specific like keys that I need, or specific account PDAs. Okay, now for the actual logic, this remove function is kind of misleading. You're not writing any removing logic, right? The key here is in remove Airbnb, right? Is this close equals authority, right? It's basically saying, hey, who can close this? Or are we closing it? Like, it's all handled through this right here, right? Notice how this close isn't in here, right? When we're referencing the Airbnb account, the close is in remove, right? So that's handling removing or closing that account. What we do want to do here is decrement Airbnb total count, I believe. I forgot what we called it already. Oh yeah, Airbnb, not total, Airbnb count. Okay, so how do we go about doing that? Well, first we need to get the user profile, right? Luckily, it's in our context, right? And so we can say and mute ctx.accounts.user profile. Okay, so now we have the user profile. What do we want to do with it? Right, think back to adding an Airbnb account, right? This is increasing the index. We now want to decrease, not index, but a number. So we can do that by saying user profile, which is the variable, dot Airbnb account, right? So this will get us the Airbnb count of the user. In this case, my user. And at the moment, this current point in time that I'm talking about it, we have one Airbnb account. So this is actually 1 right now. But to decrement it, we can say equals user profile.airbnb count dot checked sub, right, 1, and then dot unwrap. Okay, then semicolon, because this whole thing is 1 line. Okay, so check sub. It's essentially similar to check add, except instead of adding 1, we are removing 1 and then setting that equal to the new Airbnb count. And that's what remove Airbnb is doing, right? And we can just say, okay. Awesome. All right, let's remove Airbnb. Let's see if we have any errors or spelling errors. Yes, we do. Okay. So I'm assuming it has something to do with the struct. So I'm just gonna take a quick look at it. So it looks like the error, this is definitely closed. This is definitely closed. Oh, forgot to put a comma here, and maybe that would fix it. Hey, okay, build successful, right? Again, warnings we can live with, right? It's just the is reserved, which I pointed before. So we're good to go and test it, right? So after we wrote all this code, let's make sure we upgrade the program on chain. So I'm just gonna quickly upgrade and check back when it's done. All right, deployment successful. Okay, so with that said, we can go ahead and test remove Airbnb, right? So again, quickly remember that we have 1, it's this Dubai one right here, and let's see if we can remove it. So what does removing it look like? If I were to fetch this, it should go back to being an empty array. All right, so what do we need to remove an Airbnb? We need the index. So what is the index of this? All right, we know because we fetched it, it's 0. And what are the accounts, right? So now ask yourself, if you ever get confused here, am I generating a user profile public key? No. Am I generating an Airbnb account publicly? No, I'm just passing in what already exists, right? So with that in mind, you just need to get the public key of this user account, paste it on there, right? Then you're gonna take the public key of the Airbnb account, paste it on there. Then you're gonna put in your authority, which is your wallet address, essentially. Then test, and look at that. I'll remove Airbnb passed, and if I fetch all, no more Airbnb, right? The account got closed. And what you'll see too, when you store stuff on the Solana chain, you need to pay some SOL. And when you remove it, since you're not paying that SOL anymore, you get some of it back, right? So that's cool. You'll get your Solana back because you're no longer using that space, right? It doesn't really matter on DevNet because essentially everything is free. We're just testing and learning with Solana. Cool, so that's remove Airbnb. Next up, we have the book Airbnb function, right? So this should be Pretty simple because we're going to do it in a certain way, right? So let's just review real quick. We have two accounts, a user profile account and an Airbnb account, right? So what should be the difference between an Airbnb account and a booking account? Well, if you look at the Airbnb clone, if I heart this, I set it for 910, then I do reserved. You'll notice that it's exactly the same as it was before, except for a slight difference, which that this time it includes a date, right? It includes a date, okay? And it includes the date because, right, whenever you create a booking, you should know the date that you reserved it for. So I reserved it for 9/10, and this is my nice little hut in the Philippines. Awesome. And the cool thing is that it's marked by a heart. So what's the idea with a booking account, right? So with Solana, the only people that have the authority for the Airbnb accounts is the person that created it. So if I wanted to book it, I essentially can't edit that account and transfer it to me, right? Because I need to sign over that authority. And that's not always the case. So what we're going to do instead with booking an Airbnb is we're going to create a booking account, which just passes in the same data from the front end, right? So that's the workaround for this, right? We're doing this just to practice creating functions, right? So this one, I want you guys to pause the video and try it yourself and see if you can make a booking account, right? So I'm gonna give you guys 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. You got it? Cool. So let's reveal the answer as I explain it. All right, so you guys want to book an Airbnb. All right, it should be pretty simple. It's just gonna be the add Airbnb function all over again with one extra property, right? So let's do it. Let's say pub fn book Airbnb parentheses arrow and result. Yep. So if you did this so far, you are killing it. Okay. It is gonna take in a couple things, so I'm gonna format it like this. Take in the context, which is book Airbnb. We will take in the index, which is going to be U8. Going to take in date, string, location, string, country, string, oops, price, string, and of course image. Almost forgot that, string. Cool. All right, so from here, right, we need to create the context. So I'm just gonna scroll all the way to the bottom here, and let's do one of these. Okay, make this a little bit bigger for you guys, and let's make the context. So whenever we're making a context, we want to derive accounts, right? Because we're creating a new PDA for booking accounts. That's the goal, right? But the first we got to define the context. We can write instruction here. Then we can say pub struct book Airbnb info, and there we go. Cool. So what do we need for a book Airbnb? We're gonna need the user profile account. So let's get that. How do we get that? We're gonna do one of these. Oops, not that one. We're gonna say mute seeds. What seeds does a user profile account take in? Takes in my variable user tag and authority.key.as ref bam. Then we can do bump. And then we can do has one equal to authority. Alrighty. So then from there we can do pub user profile. And you guys know to drill at this point, box account, info, and then write user profile so we can get the actual struct of the user profile account. Okay? Can't forget the comma. Oh yeah, so we have that, and now we need to create the booking account, right? Initialize it, right? So luckily, we don't have to do the work of initializing it, because Anchor can take care of it for us by saying account parentheses and init, right? That's what's taking care of it. Now let's define the seeds. What are the seeds of a booking account, right? So that, again, entirely up to you. But what I'm gonna do is make a variable called book tag, right? Very similar to user tag and Airbnb tag. This is gonna be a variable that holds a string. Okay, then we're gonna take in whatever our authority is. And then, let me see, dot as ref. Cool. And actually, we don't need to add anything else. All right, that can be it. Okay, and then from there, we'll just say bump and set that equal to, oh no, sorry, bump. And then we do payer and set that equal to authority. All right, again, if you did want to make unique, even more unique hashes for the seed, right? We can add an index here, but again, we can keep it simple. All right, how much space does this take up? Not entirely sure yet. So let's just leave that blank for now. And then we'll do a pub booking account, right? This is us initializing the account, which takes in that box that we always use. Okay, account, info, booking account. All right, so the cool thing is, guys, if you wanted to make any kind of app, right? Let's say you wanted to make, I don't know, a Amazon, for example, right? You can define your items here. Like you can make a item account, right? And then put what properties an item has, right? So that's the benefit of what I'm showing you guys. Like feel free to use this however you want, right? You know, if you want, you can even add more properties to each account. We can have like the owner, how far away is it from you, and so forth. Right, so after booking account, we just need the authority and the system program again. So we can save time by just pasting the same exact thing. And that's it for the struct. Right, the next thing we'll do is need to define book tag, and we also need to define booking account. So let's start with book tag because that's going to be the easiest. And to do that, just coming down here, say hashtag constant. Then you can say pub const book tag and EU8 and set that equal to the binary string of book state. All right, so that's the string that we write when we're inputting our seeds. Remember that. Now for the states, all right, we need to define what the hell a booking account is. And if you think about it, it's exactly the same as this, except what? All right, so I'll copy this. I'll paste it because it's exactly the same. But make sure you change it, right? If you're gonna copy and paste it, make sure you did everything right. So it's gonna be booking account, not Airbnb. Okay? So what's the difference? The difference is it's gonna have a date, right? So underneath this authority, you can really write it wherever. Make sure that it has a date. And that's gonna be a string. And again, this, how much space does this take up? It should be 256. All right, same amount of space as location, country. That should be plenty for the date. And that's it, that's the booking account itself. We can now define how much space this takes up. And if I add up all the numbers together, it should give me like 3,000 something, I believe. Let me just quickly do it. Yep, 3,125 plus the account discriminator. Okay, cool. And if barring any spelling issues or missing commas, this should be good to go. Oh yes, forgot to make the logic of booking account. Yes, okay, cool. So give me an error because I didn't finish writing out the function, but we have everything we need set up. We just have to write the logic. Okay, so writing the logic. What we did, if you remember the add Airbnb, we needed to get the booking account, right? And we can do this because that's in our context. So it's in our context, accounts, booking account, boom. Okay, so now we gotta fill up this, right, with all the values. Where do we get all the values for the date, location, and stuff like that? Well, we passed it all in. Okay, so what we can do is say booking account, booking underscore account dot idx is equal to idx, and let's get the date equal to date. Booking account dot location is equal to location. booking account dot country is equal to the country. And now let's work on price. So you can just say dot price, and guess what that will equal to? It's price again, I know. All right, so we're almost done. Let's get the image. You can say img, right? Because that's what I wrote here, I think. Yep. And I think I wrote dot image. Okay. Next, we need booking account dot is reserved, and this shouldn't be false, right? Because if it was adding an Airbnb, it would be false, right? Because it's not booked yet. But when we make a booking account, oops, I went too far. It should be true. And you might ask, and it could be possible to go into the Airbnb account and switch that to true, right? The thing is the authority, right? If I make let's say I put up a nice cabin in the Philippines and Kazi tries to book it and he wants to change this to true, he wouldn't be able to because I have the authority because I made the account, right? So I could ask him and then he would sign it, but there's no guarantee, you know, he'd be there to sign it, or again, it's just not right in terms of authority. The easier workaround is to just take the data from the front end, pass it to this function call, and make a brand new booking account. All right, cool. This is just a practice creating the function, and that's why you guys should get the pattern by now. So that's okay. Let's see if it likes it now. And bam, build successful. Yep. Yeah, so now we have 2 warnings because there's 2 is reserves now, but again, totally okay, right? So now we have book Airbnb. Let's go ahead and hit upgrade so that we can finally test it. All right, there it is. There's the magic words, deployment successful, right? Let's go ahead and create a booking account. And before we create a booking account, we should probably make another Airbnb. So again, I'll use Dubai, the country, price, and the image. Okay, for the user profile, we're gonna need to get that from here. Take this public key. And the Airbnb account does not, it exists, but we need to get the right hash for it. So we're gonna get the seed, which is Airbnb state, right? It's gonna take in the pub key, and I believe the pub key is just the authority. Can make sure right here. Yep, my authority, which means it's my wallet address. And it takes in a number, and we can put U8, say 0, generate, and my authority, my address, test. Oop, did I do something wrong? Oh, unauthorized signer. Let's see real quick. Okay, I just did the same thing again. I might have put the wrong public key. So this is different, 60, let's test. Pros program. Oh, I see, it's because the last Airbnb. So, let's see. Yeah, last Airbnb was 1, right? So we need to put in 1. I'm pretty sure that's it. So instead of this, from seed, Airbnb state, we need pub key, my address. Let's do this, try 1. There you go, it passed, right? I put in the correct seed for it now, right? So now this should say 2, and total Airbnb is 1. All right, so we're keeping track of its last Airbnb and also keeping track of the Airbnb account. Okay, this is so that if we have 3 Airbnbs and they have 0, 1, 2, right, it remembers what the last index was, so we don't have multiple, right? So now if I fetch this, we have 1, perfect, and now how many booking counts? Gone, right? To simulate the front end, we're gonna book this Airbnb. So to do that, we're gonna pass in the index, which I believe it should be 1. Yep, 1. The date, we'll say September 9 through September 10. All right, is this how it's written? Yeah, dash. Okay, we could do that. Put a dash right here. Boom. Dubai. Right. And this will be all automated. When you're booking Airbnb, you won't have to input anything. It's just gonna take the info of the Airbnb account and then pass that as the parameters. So we'll do that. $88. image, you can pass the same image. Okay, cool. User profile account, pass in that booking account from seed. This should be book state and just my public key, right? Remove the index thing. We can just do this. Generate my address and test. Boom, passed. There you go. That's what we want to see. And now when we fetch this, there you go. So I have my booking account and we have the date of when I'm booking it, right? So we can do stuff with this, right? So that's the booking account. All right, believe it or not, we're on our last function, which is we should be able to unbook an account. So if I click that, we are no longer have that account booked. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and work on that. So I'm just gonna scroll to the top here and let's make that function. At this point, it should be very easy to make a function. All right, you can just say cancel booking. All right, and when we cancel the booking, it's gonna have a result like this. Okay, and the difference between this cancel booking and the remove Airbnb is that we don't need to decrement the count, right? If you were keeping track of the last booking account, then you would do that. But for us, really, you can just write okay here and we're pretty much done. Okay, we do still need to write a context though, because it's in the context that matters. So we'll say cancel book for short, and we should also take in the booking index. All right, I'm passing this in so we know which booking account you want to delete. Okay, so we need the index. That's okay. I'm just gonna make a note here. Closing account is handled in context. Okay. But if you did want to do anything else, like change, I don't know, decrement the total booking accounts, right? Then we could do that here. But we don't have that set up, right? Because you get the idea. So we just need to set up the context. All right, so this should be pretty straightforward then. So we can say derive accounts, and we can just say pub struct cancel book. Say info right here, and within this we need to get the booking account. I believe I think that's the only thing we really need. Yeah, we just need the booking account. So what I'm gonna do is say mute here, and let's just say close equal authority seeds equal to book tag authority dot key dot as ref. Then we do bump. Then we do has one equal to authority. All right, cool, and that's the booking account. Which will just have this box that we have again. Yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of repetition in a lot of the things I'm doing. All right, so just know, depending on what you want to do, it might be the same thing. Cool, so we got the booking account and we just need the authority and system program once again. And there you go. We don't need to make any account struct because we already have a booking account. Yeah, just taking in the ID. Let's see, is there anything else? Doesn't even really need the ID now that I'm thinking about it, but we'll keep it in there for now. All right, so let's just see if the build would pass. Awesome, build successful. Let's upgrade it and then we'll test it. All right, deployment's all said and done. Let's test this out, right? So we should have a booking account, right? Yep, we do, just to confirm. Oh, it doesn't have an authority. That's what I realized. Why don't you guys tell me? The authority should be the same. So let's see, let's go back to this. Yeah, we did miss one thing. For booking an Airbnb, should have made the authority booking account dot authority dot equal to ctx accounts dot authority dot key. Okay. Yeah, so if you see this 1111, if I didn't specify the authority, the default is just this 1111 right here. Okay, awesome. And yeah, we have this. Yeah, the authority should be my wallet address, but it's just the default one. That's fine. All right, so we finished deploying. We can now test the cancel booking. All right, so we're gonna pass in the booking index. I lost it, so let's get it back, which is gonna be 1. All right, the booking account is gonna be this thing over here. And the authority should be ours, but since I didn't put an authority, I think we have to use the default one, which is this. Let's see if that works. If not, it should be ours. Okay, cool. So signature verification failed. Let's try my address. Yeah, one constraint failed. So this might be a account that I don't have authority to change. Not too sure, to be honest with you guys, but let's just make a new one. Let's just book an Airbnb. The index of this, we'll say 2. The date can be September 9, or let's do 12 to September 13. The location, this doesn't exist, but we'll do space or rocket ship, country, space, price, 9999, and the image can be test. All right. So again, the user should be me. All right, that's the user profile. The booking account can come from the seed. We can say book state right here. Then the public key, which is my wallet address, generate, and the authority. And this time it should have the right authority. Oh, rent exempt threshold. Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, so I quickly just redeployed the whole contract, and let's just start from scratch, okay? So we have no users, no Airbnb account, no booking account, right? Brand new contract, right? I can show you guys how to do that later, but let's go from the top and then we can move on. The authority is my address, the seed, user state, and not string, we need a pub key, which will take in public key, generate, test, boom, cool. We got a user, right? Here's the proof. All right, this is the public key for that user. We'll know we'll need it later. Let's add Airbnb, right? So let's do Dubai, let's do UAE, $88. And for the text, the image address, we can do this guy right here. And for the user profile, we got that. It's right here, the V7. Airbnb account, we need to figure out what's going to be the Airbnb account. So we can say Airbnb state. All right, then we can do pub key, which again will be my address. And also it's going to take in a number, which is going to be the last Airbnb that they did, which will be 0. All right, we can then generate it. My address, test. Boom, we have an Airbnb. Okay, cool. So we have an Airbnb, here's the proof. Let's book that Airbnb account. So to do that, we're gonna need to book it. Take in the index, which I believe is 0 as well. Yep, it's 0. The date, we can say September 6th to September 7th. Location, right, we can do Dubai, same thing, right? Again, we wouldn't have to manually put this in when I'm calling this function. It'll be automatically passed forward in the front end. And we can take this image, paste it, cool. All right, user profile, it's that V7 thing. The booking account we need to generate from seed, which we'll say is book state pub key, and we can say my account, which is this, generate, authority, my address. There we go. Okay, so we were able to make a booking account. All right, nothing weird going on. Boom. Okay. Now we want to remove our booking account, right? So if we want to remove our booking account, we're going to use cancel booking, pass in that index, right? Get the exact booking account address, right? The public key, pass in the authority, and it should be taken care of from the context. And bam, cancel booking, pass. All right, after all that, if I fetch all, boom, no more bookings. Right, so functionality wise, Airbnb clone is done. All we have to do now is plug all of those functions in with our front end. So you guys ready for that? If you guys made it this far, drop a like in the video, comment down below that this was helpful, and you know what? Type in marshmallow in the comments so I know you made it this far, okay? Cool, so let's work on the front end now. All right, so all the functionality is done. Let's figure out how to bring this functionality and call these functions, right, from our front end. So what I'll do is I'll bring back VS Code for a second here, and let's go ahead and let's make a custom hook. All right, so if you don't know how to make a custom hook, right, all you need to do is just make a folder called hooks, and make sure it's not in pages or anything like that. It should be its own folder. So inside that hooks folder, right, I'm going to make a new file and I'm going to call it use Airbnb.js. Cool. So this is going to be important for later. All right, I'm just going to put a pin on this, and let's talk about a couple things. So you have your Solana program on chain, right? If you look under constants, you're going to have something set up for you, which is going to be the index, right? In the index.js, all right? You need to set this up in order to get the program, right? We need to first fetch the program, and what I'm going to do first is get the key, right? The address, right? So what's your address? Well, it's easy to find out because if you go to the top of your lib, my DZKS, right? It's different from earlier because I just redeployed it. I started a new program. What you want to do next is hit copy this, all right? Get back your VS Code, and then replace this because this is the demo with yours, right? So now that should be good, right? The next thing you want to do, right, is go to this toolbar right here, go to IDL and hit export IDL, right? You'll see this IDL.json. It says 8 here because I have like 8 of them when I was testing this, but yours doesn't have to say that. You can double click that if you're using Chrome, and it should open up that IDL in VS Code. So I'm gonna press Alt Z so you can see what this IDL is. And essentially is a JSON file of our app, right? You can see all the information like our constants, right? User state in here, right? We can also see all the functions we did, like update Airbnb. What you want to do is just copy this, and within the constants on Airbnb.json, right? Control A, and then erase what's in this Airbnb.json and paste, well, not the image.png, I don't know what happened there. You want to take all this stuff, copy it, and paste that in this Airbnb.json. All right, so that's part of the setup for this hook. We can go back to use Airbnb now. All right, and once you're here, let's import a couple things that we're gonna need for this, right? And I'll explain more what we're doing here. So first, let's import star as anchor from at project serum/anchor. Let's import some React hooks while we're here. We're gonna need use effect, use memo, and use state. We might not use memo, but we're definitely gonna use state and use effect. Okay, from here, we're also gonna be using import the Airbnb program pub key from constants. All right, this is what we set up earlier in our constants folder, right? Remember where we put the program ID? I'm exporting it and importing it here. Okay, next we want import Airbnb IDL from constants / Airbnb.json. All right, we're importing the IDL as import Airbnb IDL. Cool. Let's also get system program from anchor. Actually, no, we don't want this from anchor. We want it from at Solana web3.js. There you go. We want system program from there. We then want to use UTF-8 from project, at project serum anchor slash dist slash cjs slash utils slash bytes. Perfect. All right, UTF-8. Cool. We also want to import, let's see, find program address sync. And don't worry, we're going to be going over all of these, and whatever I end up not using, we can erase. All right, cool. From here, let's do use anchor wallet, use connection, and use wallet. Okay. Oh, yeah, so there's also an author filter. So let's see, do I have that here? Utils? I think it's in utils. Oh yeah, so this is the account discriminator, right? That's all set. It's already set up for you guys, right? You need to have this here because what we're gonna do is import it in our hook. Import author filter from utils, and let's import public key from Solana Web 3. And there's just two more things we can use. Set, right? This is gonna come from the date. So when we're gonna book stuff later, this is important. I was gonna import tr. Yeah, I'm not sure if we're gonna fully use those two, but we'll see. Date, FNS, local. Perfect. Okay, cool. We got all the imports. I know that was a lot, right? But what do we want to do here? Well, we want to use this hook in order to write the functions we need, and then we can call any of those functions within our index. So the alternative, right guys, is if I open up the index, right? The alternative is I write all the functions in here, kind of like how all these static functions are, right? Or I can write all the functions in here and then deconstruct it and call it here, kind of like how I'm using use wallet. Okay, that's what the custom hook is going to do, right? Just for organization purposes. Awesome. So how do we get started? We can say export const use Airbnb. Whoops. Use Airbnb is equal to an empty function. Cool. So all we need to do at the very bottom is return like this, and we're good to go, right? So essentially, if I make a variable here, let's try it. Let's just show you what I mean. Let's say const number or message is equal to what's up YouTube, right? Let's say this is my message to you guys, right? And I'm storing it in this hook, right? What you can do is return that message, okay? This is how you make a custom hook. All right, and so once you do that, go ahead and hit save. Go back to your index page. Let's say import use Airbnb, and you're gonna see the suggestion on VS Code. You can click it to finish it. Use Airbnb from hooks / use Airbnb, and let's say const, and we're gonna deconstruct use Airbnb. Here we can get whatever we want from that return. So right now it's just message, right? So if I do console.log message, right? Let's go back to our code, inspect, and let's see. Oh, right, because I don't think we're running it. Yeah, we're not even running the app right now. Let's do yarn dev, or let's cd to the front end, which would be a good idea. Then do yarn dev. There we go, right? We see what's up YouTube, right? We see it a couple times, but it's not supposed to do that, but it should just load as what's up YouTube once, right? Cool, so that's how we can get user for a hook, right? Whatever I write in user Airbnb, I can export later, right? I can set up my use effect there, so I don't have to put it in the index as well. And then, yeah, we can call in all our functions there. So let's bring back that code and let's keep it right here. Awesome. All right, so you got the idea with the hook, right? Yes? All right, so let's set up a couple different things here. One of the first things I want to do is get the program. Okay, so how do we get the program? Well, I think we are actually going to use memo for that. All right, like I said, we're going to be using use memo, and use memo. It's going to take in an anonymous function. Okay, cool. All right, so what do we want to do here? With this use memo, we want to figure out what the program is. All right, so what we can do here is erase message, and I did this already, but I removed message from here, right? So it's just an empty here, take out that console log, and we're caught up. So let's go back to use Airbnb. Awesome. From there, let's do if there's a wallet, right? So we have Anchor wallet. We're making use of this here. We can make it simple by saying Anchor wallet. Okay. So if there's a wallet, we need to set up a provider. All right. So what's our provider? Well, the provider is going to be equal to new Anchor dot Anchor provider. Okay. And it's going to take in a couple of things. We'll need a connection. We'll need a wallet. And what else will we need? Yeah, we'll need the Anchor default options as well. So to get the connection, all right, to get the connection, all we have to do is say const connection, right? We're deconstructing this and getting it from use connection, right? It's one of the inputs that we have. And again, this Anchor wallet doesn't exist yet, so let's bring that in. We can say const Anchor wallet. Set that equal to use Anchor wallet. Cool. So we got a wallet, we got a connection. Let's pass it all in. So we can say connection Anchor wallet, and we can say Anchor dot Anchor provider dot default options. Cool. All right, I'm just gonna do an Alt Z here so you can see that a lot better. How's that, guys? Awesome. All right, what do we want to do with all this information? Well, we want to return new anchor.program, and here is going to pass the IDL, right? We can see all the parameters: IDL, the program ID, and the provider. Right? If there's no provider, we use the Anchor provider. All right, so let's do that. Let's say Airbnb IDL, Airbnb program pub key, right? And then we could say provider. Cool. Yep, if statement, and then put a comma here, and then we can say connection and Anchor wallet. Right, we'll run this if any of these variables change. Okay, cool. So let's try to console log the program. Console logging the program, and let's put a little note here. It says program is here. Okay, not that window. Oh, and before I move on, I just realized there's a typo here. This is not coming from anywhere. We're not deconstructing it. I'm setting it equal to this Anchor wallet. So now let's bring in the right window. Should be this one. Boom. Okay, cool. The program is here. That means that this VN right here is the program, and inside it has these attributes, right? It has the methods, all our instructions, right? You can see add Airbnb in here, right? So if I do program.instruction, I can call in all of these functions that we made, right? And now we have account. We can see all the accounts as well with this program: Airbnb account, booking account, and the user profile, right? So which account do we want to work on? The user profile, that's correct, right? So with that said, right, we don't need to this anymore, right? What do we want to do, right? What do we want to do? When we load app, we want to get all of the accounts, right? All the necessary accounts, right? We need to get all the Airbnbs and the user, or just the one user, right? Cool. So what should we do first? First, right? First, check if there is a user, right? User profile account, right? Exists, right? If it doesn't exist, right, something else should happen, right? So if exists, right, if there is already a user, what do we want to do? Load all Airbnb accounts. Okay? If does not exist, initialize the user. Initialize user, right? Or call the initialize user function from our contract, right? So let me make this a little bit bigger. And before I do that, actually, let's get that Airbnb. Cool. So if I ask you guys really quick, how many users do we have on this program we have 1, right? But is this user the same as this user? It is not, right? We didn't initialize a user yet, right? So if I were to run all this code, am I gonna run this if statement or this if statement? Exactly, if the second one, right? It's not gonna exist, so we should run initialize user, right? If it does exist, load all the Airbnb accounts, right? So how can we make this code a reality? This is called pseudocode, right? Well, one way I can think about it is let's make a use effect. All right, use effect is a React hook, right? That's gonna let us do stuff when the component first loads, when it updates, and when it gets destroyed, right? So what I wanna run first is this function called start, right? And it's gonna be asynchronous. And let's figure out what start does. Start is basically starting the app, initializing any files we need, right? That's why I'm calling it start. Cool. So if there's a program and if we have a public key, right? How can I tell if I have a public key? Well, I think use wallet can help us out. Okay. So const, I can say public key is equal to use wallet, right? So if we're connected, we'll be able to see the public key that's connected, and it's in this variable right here. Okay, so we can put public key right there, and not comma, sorry. We need a double and, right? If this is and, both have to be true for this if statement to run. So if there's a program, if there's a public key, we are Gucci, right? So what do we want to happen then? Right, well, we can set up a try catch. Oh, okay, set up the catch. Perfect, cool. So what do we want to try though? Well, remember, let's go back to Solana Playground, right? I keep going back to Solana Playground because the tests really help you understand what's going on, right? So when we were getting this user profile, how did it generate this unique hash, this V7, right? It generated it from the seed, right? So the same way it figured it out, right? It gave us that unique hash. We can find that PDA or that unique address. Okay, I'm using interchangeable words here. All right, so we can, for now, we'll say const square brackets is equal to await, and we'll do find program address sync, right? We want to put in the seeds, right? So to get started, we're gonna put an array here, and we're gonna say UTF-8, right? Oops, sorry. Dot encode, right? And here we put in that first seed. So what was our first seed again? It was a string, right? What was that string? It was user state, right? We're turning it into, or we're encoding it here to make it similar to the seed from our Solana Playground. What else did we pass in as a seed? We passed in our public key, right? But we can't pass it as is. We have to buffer it to get it in a format that it likes. Cool. So that's that. Then we can do a comma here, and then we can say program, right? And then how do we get the ID from the program? We do dot program ID, right? Hit save here. It's like no different. It has the system program here. It has the user profile. It has the authority, our public key. Okay, cool. So from there, we'll get the profile PDA. Right, so that's what in this square bracket here, from this, right, it's gonna check if there's already something there, and it's gonna come out as profile PDA. But what's the next step, guys? The next step, right? Let's say we did find program address sync, we found it, right? It's this V7 thing, but how do we get all the information with that, right? So let's pretend all I have is this. What we need to do is take that profile PDA and fetch it. So then we'll get a user, right? If I were to put something random like this and hit fetch, it wouldn't work. Okay, so let's fetch that, and it's actually pretty simple. To fetch it, what we have to do is just say const profile account, or we're gonna make a variable to store it in, and say await program, right? This is the program itself. If you remember, it has access to all the accounts. Dot account dot user profile dot fetch, and then what do we want to fetch? We'll want to fetch whatever we got from profile PDA. Okay, so from here, right now I'm running a lot of code right now, but if there is a profile account, right, if they found something, right, let's console log load Airbnbs. All right. Else, what do we want to happen? Right? We want to essentially initialize a user. And we're not necessarily going to initialize a user right here. All right, we're going to console log need to initialize user. Okay, so which do you think is going to run? Load Airbnbs or need to initialize user, or are we going to get an error, right? Could be anything at this point, right? I'm not sure. Let's go ahead and check it out. Okay, so let's hit refresh. Okay, nothing saying it's an error just yet. Let's look at the console. Okay, reading properties of null. That's not good. I know. Right, so it's because we're not calling the function. Let's call the function. So let's say start. All right, we wrote the recipe, but we didn't make an order for it. Hey, okay, so we got an error. The user does not exist, right? There's no user account. That means this await failed. It went into the catch. So that means this catch ran, and we know we need to initialize the user. But now the question is, when do we want to initialize the user, right? When do we want to initialize the user? Well, if you remember, if you watch the to-do app, we can set up a button to initialize that user, right? Because I don't want to overwhelm the user, initializes them right away. Let's make a button for it. All right, so the question now is, where can we initialize the user, or where should we initialize the user? So let's take a quick look and understand what we're looking at. I'm gonna open up Airbnb clone. Awesome, cool. So the way I'm thinking about it is, if you look at this is our Phantom Wallet connection. If you remember the to-do app, there should be a button right here that lets us initialize the user, right? We can actually make it the become host button, or we can set up another button right here. So what component is that area that I'm writing in, right? What component is this? Is this the listings? Is this the index? Like, let's take a look, right? And this looks a little different because I got unsaved, so I redrew this again. But it should be the header. That's where it is, okay? So let's go and look at the header. I'm gonna open this real quick. Go to components, go to header, and there we go, right? And you can see that I've already done it for you, but I've already imported initialized user and something called initialized, right? So if you go down below here, awesome. So this is probably where we want to put that button. So let's put a temporary button for now and say initialize. Right, we'll just say initialize for now. We'll bring this back. And there it is, right? There's the initialize button, right? No styling whatsoever, but we want it to be conditional, right? What do I mean by conditional? Well, if we're already initialized, right? Remember how we got that account doesn't exist, right? If the account does not exist, we should see this button initialize. If we don't see that button, if the account does exist, we shouldn't see initialize. You with me? Cool. So easy way to do that, right? Let's say we're looking for something called initialize. That's a variable. Let's say if const initialized is equal to true. If that's true, should we see the button? No, we should not see the button. So what can we do here? We can say curly brackets, and we can say if initialized, right? This is called conditional rendering. Right, this is a ternary statement. If initialized, load nothing. All right, cool. And let's put it in here so it doesn't give us an error. And then this colon right here is like an or statement. If it's not initialized, if it's false, load the initialize button. Oops. Let's do an Alt-C here. Control-B, boom. Should be a lot easier to see. Okay, cool. So if initialize true, load nothing. If it's false, load the initialize button. Oh, okay, so it's already declared as a const, that's fine. Let's say let. Not because it's already declared somewhere. Const initialized. Let's see, am I declaring it somewhere? I'm gonna write initialized. No, there's no results. Okay, so it does not define yet. So what's the problem? Let's say let. I'll make it easier. I'm just gonna make this outside of a header. All right, so we're gonna go up one parent and then bring it back down. Does that make sense? So if we go here, let's just say let initialized is equal to true. Make sure I spell it right. And go to header. And let's add that in there. Initialized is equal to. This is called a prop, and I'm passing it initialized as a prop, and the name I'll give it is going to be initialized. Okay, and if we go to the Airbnb, let's see if it's undefined. Oh, now I see it, because it's because of this spelling. I keep the spelling wrong. So let's go back to the header. Scroll down. Initialized. Okay, cool. Awesome. So look at that. Initialize is true, right? So we don't see the initialize button. This conditional rendering is running this one, right? And what's happening? How come initialized is not here, but it's working, right? It's because I passed it down as a prop, right? So if you're not sure what props are, if you're a complete beginner, right? Think about it like this, right? I defined the variable initialized over here, right? What happens is I passed it down as a prop to here. So header knows what initialized is because I brought it down like this. Okay. What we want to do eventually is have our custom hook, right? To picture this as a hook. Our custom hook, which defines initialized, right? This is our use Airbnb hook. It's going to define initialized. And then we bring our hook into here. And then we pass that down to header. That's the goal. Okay? Right, so we know what happens if initialized is true. What if initialized is false? So we can go back to the index. Not that index. Let's go to this index. And I believe it's at the top right here. Set that to false. And it should come back up. There you go. So depending on what state it is, this button will show up, right? So let's give it the styling we want and the function. So what I'll do is let's move this initialized to use Airbnb. So I'm going to erase this, right? It's going to say it's undefined. That's right. Cool. Let's go to use Airbnb. And instead of making it a static variable, let's make it into a state. Yeah. So if we're going to make it into a state, I'm going to say const initialized and set initialized is equal to use state. Right? Think of this as a toggle, right? So the value of initialize should start as false, right? And it's going to turn true if there's a connection. Okay. All right. So this is a state. Then I can return initialized. Okay. And it should be false at the moment because that starts at false. And then what we could do is go back to this index and we'll bring it back here. And now it should be defined again. Okay, are you following? Cool, right. Awesome. What else can we do here? We can set up the set initialized button now. Well, we set up the button, but we need the function. Okay, so let's make our first function in here, which is gonna be initializing a user. Right, so this is, and keep in mind, we already have initialize user on the blockchain, right? We're gonna call that function, but we need to make a function on the front end that calls it, right? So we can say const initialize user is equal to asynchronous. Okay. And we always have to have some check here if there's a program and a public key. All right, because we don't want to initialize the user if there's no program that goes with it. And we can do a try catch here, catch, just shorten this to error. And then we can console.log the error. Cool. And in this try catch, we can, let's call it, right? So remember how we got a user? All right, so first we can do const is equal to find program address sync, right? And then we had to put in the seeds again. So let's put in the seeds. We can say utf8.encode. Right, what's the string that we put for the seeds? You got it, user state. Okay. And then public key dot to buffer. Can do Alt Z real quick, and this should be in the array still. And then we can do comma program dot program ID. Okay, cool. All right, so what we're doing is we're getting the profile PDA as we showed before, right? And it's gonna find the PDA for us. And remember, there shouldn't be a user there. This is like the test. If you go back to this is literally like the test that we were doing for initializing a user. This is us generating from seed the PDA address, and then we're gonna put the user account data at that address. Okay. If for whatever reason that fails, it's gonna console log an error. But what we want to do next is set up the transaction that happens, right? So we can say const tx for transaction and say await program. All right, this is our program. Remember, looking at that object, if you do .methods, we have access to all the methods, right? So I can write this in one line, or I can format it like this. I can say initialize user, right? This is me directly calling our smart contract, right? Cool. Then from here, we can say dot accounts, right? What is dot accounts? Dot accounts is our context, right? So we need to put in this. This is the account. So we need to put in our authority, our public key, right? Our authority, our public key, and then the program ID, right? So I'll do the authority first. I mean our PDA first, right? And that's the one we generate from seeds. So we can say user profile is profile PDA. Right, that's gonna be the PDA that we generated. Oh yeah, this should be an object actually. Okay, cool, no error anymore. And then what's the authority, right? The authority is our public key, right? We have access to that. And then do we have access to the system program? Right, we do. This should be the lowercase one. Program is the capital system program. It's one of our imports, dot program ID. Okay. And then we can do a dot RPC. Cool. Awesome. That's it. All right, cool. So now it's done. We can actually put a comma here and pass that function, initialize user. And then let's go back to pages. Let's deconstruct it from our hook. Initialize user. And let's bring it to the header. Yep. Initialize user is equal to initialize user. And this doesn't have to be the same name as this. You'll see that in a second. And then let's go back to use Airbnb. And we also need to change the state, right? Because once we initialize the user, this shouldn't be false anymore. It should be true, and then we shouldn't see the button, yeah? Okay, cool, so let's do that. Okay, initializing the user. That means after this RPC, we can do set initialize to true, right? And that's not the only time we want to set it to true, right? In our use effect, if you go back to it, when should this be true, right? It should be true. This should be true if there's a profile account, right? We need to set initialized to true, right? And that should actually be one of the first things, so I'll put it at the top. Okay, cool. If it's not true, right, we need to initialize the user. So just in case it's not, the last state was true, we should make it false. And that's pretty much for this else statement, right? Us seeing the button is literally telling us we need to initialize it. Okay. The last thing I want to set up is something called transaction pending, right? if there's a pending transaction we need to sign for, we can make a state for it. We can say transaction pending and set transaction pending is equal to use state. And again, this is just a flag, right? Just like before. It's just going to be true or false depending on what happened, and it should be false at first. Okay, and what I want to do with this is essentially load it again if the transaction is pending. So what we want to do is make another and here, and if transaction pending is false. Now, if there's no pending transactions, you can load the try catch. This use effect here. Oh yeah, we only want this use effect to run based on this dependency module. If I don't put anything here, it's just gonna run once. But if I put the public key, it's gonna run again when the public key ever changes, and it will run again if the program ever changes, and it's gonna run again if transaction pending ever changes. Okay, so what do we want to do with this transaction pending is whenever we start a transaction, we can say set transaction pending to true, turn that flag on, right? And once that flag is done, right, we can do something called a finally here and do a set transaction pending as false, right? So we don't have to refresh all the time. Sometimes this will take care of it. Cool. Amazing. Okay, cool. So we can head back to the header. Let's go to the header. Yep. And what we want to do now is let's fix up the styling of this, right? This button should have the styling that's very similar to the become host button. So we can actually just copy in that. Where is that button? Okay. So we can say class name and just paste that in there. And more importantly, we need an on-click. On-click. On-click is equal to, and we should have access to this, initialize user. Okay. There you go. Should be defined now. Let's save that and let's see what happens. All right. Moment of truth. I refresh this. We should see initialized. If I click this, on click next to function, got object. Okay, cool. It thinks it's an object. Let's figure that out. Why is this an object? Okay, we can test if this is an object by right before we pass it down here. You can say console log initialize. Oh, I see. Right, did I put it the same name? Initialize user? Oh, okay, I did. We can say console.log initialize user, comma, yo, let's see. It's a function. Okay, it looks like it's a function. It's a function in index, right? Now the trick is it a function in the header? Click refresh. Got type object. That's strange. Oh, I think it's because that way the way I made the on click. Let's put this in here. You might like that better. Hey, okay, cool. It's a function now. All right, now we do some testing. Okay, that's something. Initialize user is not a function. Okay, that is interesting. Ah, because it's spelled wrong here too. God damn it. Okay, so we're gonna have to spell it wrong over here without the I. Well, this we can spell right, but the use Airbnb, it should be without the I, and now I might like it. Okay, how did I spell here? Initialize user. All right, I'm just gonna hit refresh one more time. Let's hit initialize and see what's up, because I know it's a method. I spelled it wrong, but right. And let's see. Initialize. Oh, dot account. Okay. Yeah, this should be dot accounts. Hit save. Hit this. Hey, okay. If you see this, this is a very good sign. It means that the transaction is going through. What matters is if I hit approve that it works. So let's hit approve. Oh, look at that. You guys saw that? The button disappeared automatically without me refreshing, right? So there were some comments down below saying we shouldn't have to refresh. You can just set a state that flags if a transaction is pending or loading. And once it's done, that should go away. So let's see if that function worked. There should be 2 user profiles now. Let's go. So this 8CD, right? This was generated from our function, right? We successfully called a function from our smart contract, right? The only issue is that I spelled it wrong right here, right? But we can fix that, right? You can just redeploy the contract. Upgrade the contract and then just export the IDL again, right? But for now, initializing user is done.